All right. We're all set. There we go. Great. Hello. Hey, Zyrother, what's going on? How are you? Is the sound okay? Let me know if the sound is not working, and then we will get under that. I'm just running a little bit behind, so maybe if we can start just a couple minutes later than usual, just by a couple minutes though. I hope you don't mind. Great. Wonderful, thank you. Cooper Glover's here, Mike Eli's here, Cool Kids Clips is here, Eric E is here, hello, and then Zyrother. Thanks, thank you so much, my friends. So as I say, it's now 6 a.m. here in Tokyo, more or less, I believe, but yes, it's 6:01 actually by my clock. But let's just wait a minute or so. As I say, I apologize for starting a little bit later than usual. I hope you can forgive me. But okay. Great. Oh, and of course, today's topic of discussion is going to be The Spy Who Loved Me. The film, The Spy Who Loved Me, from 1977. So it's Lewis Gilbert directed, and starring Roger Moore, of course, as James Bond, and a lot of other great performances as well, and Roger Moore's performance as well. So we will get to this momentarily. Now, okay. So as I say, we'll start in about maybe less than a minute. And in the meantime, please make yourselves comfortable in the chat room, and I will do my best to follow along. Great, Erwin is here. Hello, Erwin. Rico is here. Hello. St. Mark is here from Chicago. Hello. It's nice to see you. Luke. Luke is here. Luke Awabdi. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's great. Great to see you. Thank you very much, Luke. Great. Marcus Walker's here. Hello. Armin is here. Hello. Hey Daisuke, saw this 8 years ago, and the only thing I remembered before I saw it last night was the ending. Okay, well, the ending is also very, very memorable, of course. Let's see. Erwin says, really looking forward to having this discussion. Not only do I think it's Moore's best Bond, it is one of the best Bond films, period. Collector 85 is here from Alaska. Hello. Oh, St. Mark, you said earlier, love your thick frame glasses and button-down collared shirt. Thank you. So sexy. Oh, thank you. Is it me, or is it Roger Moore or the film? I'm not sure. But in any event, thank you very much for the compliment. Zyrother says, yes, agreed, it's one of my favorite. It's my favorite one of the Moores. Giovanni is here. Hello. From Boston. Hello, my friend. And oh, tea or coffee? So this is tea. This is Japanese tea. So just I would have had coffee, but I didn't have time to make it. So, but I had some tea in the refrigerator, so I put some tea in there. So it's not bad. I need to have a cold drink. I find it's a little bit easier on my when I speak. So. But in any event, let's begin, and I will return to the live chat periodically throughout this live stream. So without further ado, my friends, let us begin in earnest. Greetings from Tokyo, and this is Daisuke, and this is live, and we are here with the hope of being able to discuss you and I together, everyone here, the film The Spy Who Loved Me, which is of course a film that is a Roger Moore James Bond film, and it's from 1977, directed by Lewis Gilbert, starring a lot of people. And I'll try throughout this live stream to start a conversation about the cast and the story as well. And so before we go into any discussion in earnest, let me say that this discussion is as I say, it's a discussion about the film. And so if you want to join into the discussion, please feel free to do so. The live chat is open for anyone, and anyone and everyone is welcome. So please feel free to stop by and say something in the live chat and the like. So we have, as always, great people, lovely, warm and welcoming friends and viewers. And so please feel free to make yourself comfortable there. And with respect to the live chat, everyone, as always, is always very respectful, and you've always shown me a lot of kindness and courtesy. So I always know, and I always rely on you to show the same kind of courtesy and respect to others here, even where we might find disagreement. Disagreement, as we know, is perfectly okay, and in fact, it should be expected when you have a film as popular like the James Bond films. So I know that you will treat everyone with the same degree of mutual respect, care, and understanding. So thank you very much in advance for that, my friends. Also, I should say that if you want to ask me or address a comment to me, ask a question to me, then please feel free to use the live chat function. I will do my best periodically to check in with the live chat, although I do ask for a few things in that department. So first, if you have any question or comment for me that is not related to The Spy Who Loved Me, then I will, maybe with all due respect, I will very gently skip over the comment or question, and because I just want to focus my energies today on The Spy Who Loved Me. There might be some other Bond films that could come up in my conversation, but primarily speaking, I do want to focus my energies on The Spy Who Loved Me. So if you find that maybe a comment or question was skipped over, then I apologize in advance. If you want to readdress to me such comment or question, please feel free to do so at any time under a video or somewhere else on this channel, and I will do my best to return to it. Also, the live chat is, well, if you have any questions or comments for me about this film, I will do my best to address it, but the live chat does go at quite a pace, and so I'm very much limited by my own capabilities and my technical prowess, which is not so good. So if I skip over something by accident because of my own deficiencies in terms of technical understanding, then please forgive me. It's not my fault. It is my fault, but it's not my intention. It's merely because I'm unable to keep up, and maybe I skipped something, or the screen isn't showing something to me accidentally, or that sort of thing. So I apologize in advance if I skip over your name or your comment due to such reasons. Also, the conversation today will be about the film, and so we will go into details, very specific details. So please, if you haven't seen the film yet, I would strongly suggest maybe turning off this live stream and then coming back at a later date, because this will be uploaded to the channel as a video. So you can always come back, and then if you're interested still, you can watch this or maybe part of it, or depends on your schedule, of course. But as I say, we will be speaking about specifics of the plot. And last but not least, of course, I don't claim to be any sort of expert or insider when it comes to this or any film. So I'm speaking 100% as a viewer and fan of this film and the James Bond films in general, and also the books. But today will be the focus on the film. So I'm speaking as a casual fan, which means that I don't have all the info as to the to every single aspect of this film and the production and the history of it. So, but there are many people here in the live chat who know so much. So maybe, and I always rely on you, my dear friends, for your help and your support, and also for answering my questions as well, because I have, as I say, a lot of things that I don't understand or recall or remember. So, so if you have any specific questions, please feel free to ask in the chat, and I'm sure that someone will come up with a comment or response to such question. So with that, I want to say thank you very much, and let us begin with the conversation about The Spy Who Loved Me. So let's see, excuse me. All right. Okay. So, The Spy Who Loved Me is well, where should we begin in terms of an opening statement about The Spy Who Loved Me? It is, in many senses of the word, an epic Bond film. It is large in scope. It travels in terms of many places of its geography feeling. It has different textures of atmosphere and environment, but it also, of course, has this seemingly globe-trotting sense about it, and high stakes, as in the destruction of the world due to some kind of instigation of a world war between the superpowers during this time. We're still in the Cold War, as we know, in 1977. And this instigation of nuclear Armageddon, essentially, in order to somehow destroy the civilization as we know it, and then support or inaugurate some kind of life under the sea or something. So, and so this is, the stakes are very high here, and so it feels big, and it feels like a huge James Bond epic, and it comes during this time of 1977 when we are getting epics and blockbusters and that kind of huge entertainment from the likes of Hollywood primarily, of course, or Hollywood in a very emphatic way, as we know, if we understand our sort of Hollywood film history. From the mid-1970s onwards, as perhaps even a little bit before that, of course. So with that, we have, and also we have a lot here with regard to the background and history leading up to this film. I mean, it was very hectic, incredibly hectic, almost to the point of maybe the Bond films, as we know it, in terms of the Eon production films. I mean, they could have reached. And Danjak, I mean, they could have reached they could have reached their end with respect to The Man with the Golden Gun, because of certain, actually there were two fundamental issues, two really huge issues that came up leading up to The Spy Who Loved Me, or prior to the production of The Spy Who Loved Me. One was the situation involving the interest in, or control, the creative control of or the ownership interest of Harry Saltzman in the sort of in the entity or business, or the entity that was in essence the creative power of the cinematic expression of James Bond as we know it here in this iteration. And then the second main one was this notion of Kevin McClory and Blofeld and Thunderball-esque type of storylines in films, which is a very fascinating and quite legal and technical story in and of itself. And so these two issues, the first one I think in particular, came up around this time, or prior to or during the production of the film. And so we have, and you can find more information about this. I don't want to go too much into detail because I want to go more into the film, but it is important to keep this in mind because it does indicate a lot of turmoil, chaos, and activity, and perhaps the need to want to be emphatic with a Bond film in terms of the creative mind and the people who were involved creatively, because these people were at the heart, essentially, of these two major issues that were at play, as I say, prior to this film being eventually made and released. So, so a lot was at stake, and so. In terms of the direction of Bond, who was controlling Bond, the cinematic version of Bond anyway. And in fact, and who was controlling the cinematic version of Bond. I mean, this is at the core of these two issues. And and it takes a lot of time and money and lawyers and courts and things to get, to make sure everything is basically interpreted, at least for the time being. And so once those issues were resolved, and you can get a lot of information about this. There's been a number of interesting things that have been created or prepared, documentaries or writings. So if you need more information, please feel free to look that up. But the point is that once everything was pretty much resolved, at least for the time being, then we could go ahead, or the creative processes could go ahead and make this film after all this time and energy had been spent. And so so there was that. Also, it is in many ways, it could be said to be in terms of tone, feeling, and dynamic, it could be said to be a different approach being established in the Roger Moore universe of James Bond, because as we know, we've had a different creative voice as well. Because as we know, we've had in essence, I mean, a lot of people were involved, of course, but in essence, Guy Hamilton, Tom Mankiewicz, directly relevant to the creative process. And so now we have other creative voices that are directly involved in this production. And so I think we have that, and we have, and also we have Roger Moore established, perhaps. I thought he was very well established from the very beginning with Live and Let Die, and as I think a lot of other people would agree. But there is something of now a sense of familiarity and comfort. Now we know and understand whenever we see a Bond film in Roger Moore, okay, this is Bond. So that is the type of conversation that need not be had, because we already have had that kind of conversation before. This is Bond he's already been established. We're ready to go. And so that, I think, is the essential buildup, if you will. And so a lot was at stake, but it seems like then everything was pointing to the spy who loved me's favor in terms of this. Also, we have to remember that it needed to be a new story, essentially out of whole cloth, because right, we had the underlying novel, The Spy Who Loved Me, from Ian Fleming, but the film essentially needed to be made more or less without any direct reference or any sort of direct inspiration from that novel, direct inspiration, I should say. And so we had, therefore, a creative process that really needed to, in essence, create a new story out of whole cloth. Now we will see that perhaps this new story isn't as new as one might think, because there are a lot of links and maybe thematic and plot and narrative comparisons, shall we say, with a film like You Only Live Twice that came a little bit earlier, or quite a bit earlier, in fact. But be that as it may, we still have, as I say, this very new plot, and we have Bond, and we have high stakes, global stakes, British and Russian agents joining forces, and we have intrigue, we have great action sequences, we have Bond on skis again, we have underwater, we have car chase, we have Q and the like, and we have huge epic villains, In particular, we have one that will see a repeat or reemergence in another film. And so this is all to say that this is, I think, it has all the elements for the epic Bond film that it is, The Spy Who Loved Me. And I have to say finally that this is one, as I say, that I saw in it as part of the batch of James Bond films that I saw growing up, and either on VHS or broadcast on TV. And when I say broadcast on TV, I would say my initial memories of this would be from London weekend television, and ITV, and in the United Kingdom when I was living there as a kid at the time in the 80s. And so we had a lot of Bond films being broadcast, and this was one of them. So it was it became part of the Bond fabric, and it was so cool, and there were so many iconic moments in this. I'll try to share with you some feelings that I have. I think the score, it has that wonderful bouncy disco type of feel to it a lot of the time. It's also very romantic, and it has a very slow, beautiful melody that is intact, and it's used in a lot of interesting ways in the film. So overall, we have a lot of artistic, iconic moments. We have some epic moments. We have a lot of fun moments, which makes this, I think, a favorite of many people. Some people cite it as being their absolute favorite Bond film, I think for excellent reasons. So this and more will be some things that hopefully we can talk about in detail as we move forward with this live stream today. But before we go into any further, let me now go to the live chat, and then we will move on from there. So let's see, scrolling down. Rico says, this film is a fun one. Maybe not a masterpiece compared to films within the series like Dr. No, but still bestows a great and memorable nature. Kubrick Lover says, I watched this film so many times on tape, I ruined the tape. The Cinematic Collector, excuse me. Hello, Daisuke. I've seen it, but don't remember it. I will watch it soon, as I do have the 50 collection. Great. Damien says, watching from Shetland. This is another classic adventure. My only little gripe from the film was not enough of Sandor, or as Stromberg says, Shandor. So a couple more scenes before he was killed off. That's it. Yes. Shandor. Shandor? Yes, sir. Jaws. Yeah. So very fascinating that you pick up, that you focus in on the character of Shandor. Yes, I actually agree. I think Shandor had this great menace and presence when he was first introduced to us, when he came out in that room in Atlantis, after Dr. Beckman and Professor Markovitz have just left the room, of course. So I think, yeah, that more Shandor would have been really exciting, actually. But we got an interesting fight up atop the roofs, right? The rooftop, and where's Fekesh, right? Pyramid, and so we got a nice necktie action. Hold on, there we go. Excuse me here. Let me just. There we go. So yes, Damien says what? Sorry, I just read your comment. So thank you very much, Damien. Yes, Zyrother says get the newer Ultimate James Bond collection. Yes. Okay, just skipping through. Mike Eli says, wasn't this Bond theme used in a commercial at one point in time? So you're talking about the song Nobody Does It Better, I think. Or you're talking, I'm not sure, it's probably Nobody Does It Better, right? So that you're referring to. So I'm not sure of its commercial use outside of the Bond film, but yeah, it's one of those classic jingles. And it's a song that, there are those types of songs where they seem to be so classic and iconic as James Bond songs. And then there are those songs that seem to be maybe maybe outside of the James Bond feel, but they are James Bond songs, you know what I mean? So because of maybe how they're marketed or how they're it feels maybe this song might be within those two worlds. I'm not sure, but it does have this, I think, this great overall appeal as a Bond song, but also as a pop song as well. It's really great, and incidentally, I love the fact, I love how it uses the phrase "the spy who loved me," because it doesn't use it as the title of the song, but it fits it in there a little bit. What is it like? Heaven above me, the spy who loved me is keeping all my secrets safe tonight. Da 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 da. So that's great. I always appreciate it whenever you have a song either mention the title of the film either in its main refrain or somewhere else in the lyric. So I was, I mean, we'll get to it. I think it's a very fine song with all time high for Octopussy, but I admit to being a little bit disappointed whenever I hear the song, because it never has the word, I think, it never has the word Octopussy anywhere in the lyric. And also what's the other one that I really like? Oh yeah, I like the song to Quantum of Solace in this way, because what is it? It's called Another Way to Die, and it's a pretty experimental sounding song actually, and we'll get to Quantum of Solace soon, I hope. But that one also has, it doesn't have the entirety of the title, right? Quantum of Solace, but it's the solace. And he just suddenly says solace, and then that's it, I think, and then that's it. But at least he said the word solace. It would have been really cool if he said quantum or somewhere, but anyway, maybe he says quantum and I just didn't catch it, or maybe Alicia Keys says quantum somewhere else, but I forget. But anyway, great job with the song and the like. Yes. And also, I should say further about the song, I do like these. I like it when you have a Bond song that is a slow and romantic one, and in the major key. I do like these. So You Only Live Twice is an example. It's probably not considered to be the main song of that film, but We Have All the Time in the World from On Her Majesty's Secret Service. I love that, and here Nobody Does It Better is a very it's a lovely, nice leisured pace, and it's not necessarily. I mean, you have great songs that can be loud and high rhythm, intense rhythm, bombastic, fast, etc., brooding, etc. But I like it when it becomes light and becomes bright and becomes cheerful, like this film. All Time High, I would say, is the same thing, and that's so. So I like that. I wish I will get to the Daniel Craig films later, but one of the things I always thought was all the songs are very, like, I mean, maybe You Know My Name from Casino Royale. I really like that song, and then afterwards I mean, they're all very, very quick and rapid, or they're very dark and brooding, you know, like Skyfall, I think, is very like this. And in particular, The Writings on the Wall. It would be nice to get a nice bright song like Nobody Does It Better again. But in any event, thank you very much. Let's see. Cooper Clever 1972 says, I heard this formula for Spy Who Loved Me was first started with You Only Live Twice, then this film, and then Moonraker. I think this time they got the formula right on the most this time. Yes. Yes, it's basically it's a You Only Live Twice remake. Yes, Lewis Gilbert is also involved, of course. He was the director before. Hanok is here. Hello. Scolder22 is here. Hello. It's nice to see both of you. And let's see. Yes, Armin says there was also some From Russia with Love, the train scene, an homage, and the whole teaming up with a Russian spy. Yes. Let's see. Yes, so I guess we can go. Let me just stop here for a second. And I guess we can talk about the plot, if you like. The plot of The Spy Who Loved Me. It's a very interesting plot, as people have already referred to it. It does seem to be kind of a remake of You Only Live Twice, although we should say that it has, how should I put it? It has that plot element about capturing some kind of maybe military, or in that film it was a spacecraft. Here they're nuclear submarines. So and then those capturings of things cause some tension, which could lead to the outbreak of nuclear Armageddon. So this actually goes into some issues with the plot of The Spy Who Loved Me, in my opinion. But so let's try to work through those and see what we can come up with together. So the plot of The Spy Who Loved Me is, if we understand it correctly, if I try to understand it correctly, it's that Stromberg is this huge, I guess, industrialist, shipping magnate. I'm not sure exactly what his job is, but he is obviously some kind of industrialist. So dealing with industry, shipping, or that sort of thing, and maybe dealing with construction and the like. And so one of his, or tankers, and so that comes into play with the Liparis, right, which is a very important component of the film. So we understand that the Liparis was created and launched, according to Naomi, 9 months ago, I think. And so we understand that this is the tool that is used to, first of all, capture nuclear submarines. And in order to capture nuclear submarines, Stromberg needs to employ various experts and academics of the field, in particular Dr. Beckman and Professor Markovits. And so he essentially used them in order to have them create what we understand to be the nuclear submarine, the submarine tracking system, by which we assume the Liparis is equipped with the tracking system that has been created by Stromberg and Company, in order for the Liparis crew to be able to find the route of any nuclear submarine, follow it, and then capture it by means of the Liparis mouth opening up and then enclosing them and trapping them inside. And then there was, and the notion is that for some reason, Stromberg waits until he has captured 3 nuclear submarines, and then he uses, I suppose, 2 nuclear submarines as part of his master plan, which is he will have the 2 nuclear submarines now equipped with Stromberg crew and strategically placed in the world, and then they will fire on the various targets, their world targets. And the idea of this, right, if I'm not mistaken, is that one submarine will fire on a target in the Soviet Union, and then the other will fire on the United States, I think. Do I have that right? And then once that occurs, then that will trigger retaliation on both sides, which will cause further retaliation and the start of World War III, which will then lead to the end of the world, and thus that will leave Stromberg able to start his civilization, beneath the sea. So that's his plot, right, I think. So I hope I have that right. So this is very similar then to You Only Live Twice, right? Because in You Only Live Twice, it's a similar thing of this space vehicle capturing these ships, and that causes both sides of the Cold War to suspect the other, and thus creating global tensions, which if aren't resolved by a certain point in time, will cause one side to, in essence, attack the other. In that film, I think it was the U.S. was ready and willing to push the button if their last ship was going to be captured, and so that was the plot there. So here, it's same, but it's slightly different. Now, one thing I admit I'm not quite clear on is, right, in You Only Live Twice, the whole point about having both sides become antagonistic towards each other was basically to steal the ships in order to make the other side, to make one side think that the other side did it, where in fact it was a completely other third party, right, Spectre. So it was all based on not knowing, right, or suspecting the other side. Here, in The Spy Who Loved Me, it seems very obvious that we have right, the disappearance of the nuclear submarine. So there's one from the British fleet, if I'm not mistaken, then there's one from the Soviet fleet, and then there's one later in the film from the US. So, and then it's very clear that the British and the Russians think that someone else is involved with this kidnapping, in essence, or stealing of nuclear submarines. And so, at least as far as the British and the Russians are concerned, they are willing to work together in order to try to solve this mystery. So, at least between those two sides, it doesn't seem to be any kind of instigation of political tensions. And also, if we understand that, I mean, they go on to a U.S. submarine, right? And the final part of the film. And so if a U.S. submarine is willing to have a British, a member of the British, right, military, and also a member of the Russian military on the ship, a nuclear submarine, then that suggests also a sense of cooperation, not just between the British government and the Russians, but also the British, the Russians, and the Americans. And so there is a sense of global cooperation into trying to solve the mystery of the missing submarines, right? I think. Okay, so that seems to be quite the opposite from the type of tension between East and West that we saw being created by Spectre in You Only Live Twice, right? So on that front, it seems a little bit odd to me, therefore, that Stromberg's plot would be to try to have both sides cause a war against each other, right? Because it seems from this, at least in this early point, everyone seems to be working together against Stromberg. So people seem to already have a sense that it's not the other side that's responsible for the kidnapping of these submarines, right? So, but maybe it has to do with this idea of what is it? Military buildup and global thermonuclear war, and the idea that if one side is attacked, that will automatically trigger the defense mechanisms of the attacked party, which will essentially mean counterattack, and that will be irreversible because it's somehow automated. We saw a kind of nightmare scenario of this played out in something like Dr. Strangelove, for example. But I think that's what's going on here with The Spy Who Loved Me. I mean, that's the only scenario that would make sense to me in terms of Stromberg's plot. I mean, that also assumes that Stromberg has this sense of logic in terms of his own motivations, because it seems like, I'm not sure how much he thought through in terms of the planning, right? Because if he had the destruction of the world, that's obviously the first major component of his plan. But we never get a direct sense of the second major component of his plan in the film, anyway, which is creating the world beneath the sea. I, just a little aside, I don't know how you feel, but whenever he talks about, creating by destroying the world, by creating a world, a new and beautiful world beneath the sea, when he's talking about his motivations to Bond and Major Amasova in the Leparis control room, he says beneath the sea. I know it's slightly different wordage, but I'm always reminded of the Disney film, The Little Mermaid, and the song, Under the Sea. So I always think that maybe if Stromberg had survived the events of The Spy Who Loved Me enough to have been able to catch the film, the Disney version of the story, The Little Mermaid, and the musical and the music, I'm sure he would have taken a lot to the song Under the Sea. But anyway, so the plot, I think, is something where we aren't privy to the second major stage, which is the creation of the society. Maybe Stromberg was already taking care of that, and we didn't need to look at that stuff. Or it could be that maybe Stromberg is one that is really focusing in on one component of his plan, but not necessarily on the other. And so, in any event, we're not quite sure what would have happened had Stromberg succeeded with his plan. So that's interesting food for thought anyway. So does that indicate that Stromberg is maybe not fully following through with his plot or with his plans, or is it that he is really planning everything? It's just we as viewers aren't privy to that because it's not shown in the film. I mean, it's your interpretation as to how you see it and how you see Stromberg. But in any event, this is the main component that we see as part of that Bond and crew, essentially, or crews, end up thwarting at the last minute. And incidentally, also well, I'll get to that in a second. Sorry about that. The crews themselves. Also, this is one thing that we have to remember too, right? If I'm not mistaken, which is that there was the British submarine that was taken. And then the crews were then of that sub were then taken. Essentially, they were captured, and they were put into essentially this huge cell in the Leparis, I think. Then also we assume the same happened to the Russian submarine, but I don't think that we ever saw the sub itself being kidnapped, or we saw the crew or anything. And in fact, when the U.S. sub enters the Leparis in the final act of the film, and they go in, and Bond frees the crew member, and they all free the crew members, and they have that final epic battle between Stromberg's men and then the freed crew members. I don't seem to recall any of the Russian crew, right? There was the U.S. and the British crew, the blue colored uniform and then the white colored the shirts, right? But I don't remember anyone freeing anyone from the Russian crew, I think. But the Russian crew should have been there too, but maybe they were there, it just wasn't referred to. But in any event, there were 3 subs. Now the other thing too is, why do you need to wait until 3 subs were taken, but you only used 2? I'm not sure about that myself. Maybe a third was needed as a spare. I don't know. But it certainly was needed for the plot, right? Because I think they needed to get a missile or they needed to have the detonator, and I think the detonator, if I'm not mistaken, needed to be taken from a missile, which was obviously going to be housed in that 3rd submarine in the Leparis, and that detonator would be used, or that explosive matter would be used in order to blow up the shield of the control room, right? And so, if you think about it, if you only had 2 nuclear submarines that were off, then how would you blow up that shield? You couldn't, because there would be no 3rd submarine there with a nuclear missile from which you could take the explosive matter plus detonator and timer and then put it on against the wall for it to blow up. So and also the 3rd submarine is also a very good narrative convenience, also in the sense that it's the vehicle that takes Bond and Major Amasova, but Bond into the Lapars itself for the final battle. And it also shows how the Lapars works, because we see in real time the Lapars mouth opening up and then kidnapping the sub. So in terms of showing us all these mechanics, the third submarine was very crucial. In terms of Stromberg's plot, again, I don't know, because it was never launched and used. So, and also interestingly about Stromberg's plot, I don't know if I'm overthinking this, but it seems very. It seems to me that if I were Stromberg, I would be absolutely sure that that there would be no way, no countermeasure that could be implemented at the very last second. And so maybe there was some kind of special code, and that's that kind of thing that was used by Bond and then the great Shane Rimmer, of course, to program the subs to send the code in order for them to change the target at the last minute and then fire on each other. So it seems like the captains on both ships, of both subs, were very okay to change the target at the very last minute, which I'm not sure what protocols were in place in terms of what they needed to follow or not follow in those circumstances. I mean, there have been films made about this, about the uncertainty about what to do. So again, but that's not focused on very much. In any event, they are able to, or Bond is able to switch the targets at the very last couple seconds, really, and then able to thwart Stromberg's dastardly plot. So, and then this leads to the final showdown with Bond and Stromberg and then Jaws. So that's the plot, right? And so with this, what we understand also is that someone in Stromberg's inner technical circle, and we understand maybe it was his assistant that we saw at the very beginning with Stromberg, and then the elevator, and then down into the slide, and then the shark, which is very much a la Helga Brandt in You Only Live Twice, with the piranhas. I was waiting for the assistant to say something similar to Helga. Aim, I think, I'm not sure, but yes, so we have that, which we understand was motivated by Stromberg's suspicion that she leaked out information of the submarine tracking system or something of that nature to various persons in the world, including contacts in the British government, because that's what gets Bond on the mission in the first place, because you get the schematic of an actual tracking of the nuclear submarine in British military. And so that is, I think, a type of, what is it, a little, what's the phrase, in negotiations. So this assistant, we understand, was trying, I think, to sell or to leak out information, which then was on this microfilm, which was then obtained by Max Kalba. And so through whatever set of circumstances, either she or Max Kalba, or maybe people in between, or a whole network of spies, industrial spies, operated in order to have what ultimately occurred, which is Max Kalba having the microfilm, which has whatever plans or schematics on it that are indicative of some kind of nuclear tracking device or something. I don't know. It ends up being nothing, as we know, because it doesn't show anything of real substance, but it does have a little clue as to who might be behind it all in terms of the little insignia or half insignia of Stromberg and the fish, right? The Stromberg stripping, it's not, I was going to say Stromberg stripping line. That's not quite the Stromberg shipping line, excuse me. So the so that leakage of information, therefore, is the start of the plot going forward, because that leakage of information is sent ultimately to the Ministry of Defense and also MI6, and then that sends Bond on the mission to Egypt, and they understand that that's where the source that little clue of information is based, and so they go there, and then Bond touches base with his contact there, which leads him to Fekesh and then Kalba. I mean, you have to reach a man called you have to reach a man called Kalba, but to do that, you need to reach a man called Fekesh. So, why he couldn't just go straight to Max Kalba, I'm not sure, but he has to go to his contact Hussein, and then Fekesh, and then Max Kalba, and then Max Kalba leads to the microfilm, and then the microfilm leads to the clue about Stromberg's. It's not oratory, it's laboratory, and Stromberg has a marine research laboratory on Corsica, I believe. Actually, sir, it's in Sardinia. So they go to Sardinia, and that leads to the meeting with Stromberg in Atlantis, which we assume is this laboratory, or this is in Sardinia, and then that leads to the discovery of that leads also to further discovery, and then getting onto the USS submarine, which will then lead to the Laparis, and then leads to the final showdown with the Laparis, and then finally leads to the showdown on Atlantis, and then Bond and Amasova escape, and they have their little fun, and curtain closes. Nobody does it better. So that's essentially, I think, the plot of the film. Of course, I'm skipping over so many details, but before I continue on and risk monopolizing the conversation even further, let me now go to the live chat where I last left off, and then we will go from there. So let's see. Hennock says, this is a great Bond installment. Yes. Rod is here. Hello. Very much underrated Bond movie, in my opinion. Damn Fool is here. Hello. Damn Fool Idealistic Crusader. Incidentally, if someone, I'm blanking at the moment, so there's a gap. I can't remember what is the name of that ring in the film that Bond can't touch with the I guess it's the explosive matter and the detonator when he's trying to take that thing out of the missile. The impulse conductor circuit. He can't touch the impulse conductor circuit. It's magnetic, right? Can someone correct me or let me know exactly what what is that ring called anyway? You know, I can't touch the impulse something. I think it's impulse conductor circuit, but let's see. Sorry about that. Let's see. Damfool says, I watched my Japanese letterbox Laserdisc last night in preparation. Well done. Jose is here. Hello. It's nice to see you. Rod says, I love Barbara Bach. Yes, Barbara. She is very memorable here as Anya Amasova, Agent Triple X, or according to the little music box there, the Dr. Zhivago music box. It's Agent Triple X or something. Yeah. And let's see. Reverend Kyle Love, please forgive my intrusion. I'm simply stopping by. No intrusion at all. You're a dear friend, so you're welcome. You are welcome here anytime, my friend. Zyrother says, yep, original song, original score, and production design. Let's see. Hennock says, yeah. Seth is here. Hello. It's nice to see you, Seth Walsh, my dear friend. Let's see. Just scrolling down here. Yes, people are speaking about the song. Nobody does it better. Super Antonio is here. Hello. Yes, a great theme song. I agree. Nobody does it better. Cooper Glover makes mention to the ski jump. Yes. I think they almost didn't do the ski jump parachute scene at the start because there's a snowstorm before they filmed it up there in Canada. So there's some great information, for example, in the documentary, the making of documentary of this film about that. But let's talk about the opening sequence, because that's also related to the plot, which is and it introduces a lot of things. So we get, of course, first of all, we get a slightly different twist, or not a different, it's a different gun barrel, because this is not the same Roger Moore gun barrel that we saw in Live and Let Die and and the man with the golden gun. So this is the actual sequence that I understand, right, will be more or less the basis of the sequence of the gun barrel that we will see from here on in any Roger Moore film. So it's got the walk, and it's a little bit of a, it's not like, we're certainly not talking about Daniel Craig territory in Quando's da da da, you know, or it's like, it's very, so it has a nice mellow feel to it. Maybe his Live and Let Die, Man with the Golden Gun, gun barrel was a little bit faster, and maybe he squatted down a little bit in order to get some balance. Here, I think he has nice posture, and it's dun 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 dun, dun, you know, and so that's nice. It has a nice leisurely pace to it, which I think is very much akin to what we understand Roger Moore is. Right? There's a moment here in the film where he's in Egypt, and he's with his contact, and you know, can I convince you to stay for the night? And Roger Moore's Bond says, you know, I really have to get going. And then a young woman appears, and you sure I can't convince you to stay the night? And what is it? When one is in Egypt, one must delve deeply into its treasures. So this is the type of Roger Moore performance of Bond that we have seen. And which I think makes him very much memorable in his own interpretation, right? And I think this part is written maybe in that sort of spirit. He likes to enjoy life, and he likes to have fun. You know, one of my favorite moments, we talked about it last week, was with Man with a Golden Gun, right? When he's talking with Britt Ekland's Goodnight, and he's saying, you know, we have Hip, our friend and our colleague. He's going to do all the work trying to find all the clues and all the leads that we need in order to solve this mystery. So he's going to do all that work. But here, Goodnight, you and I, we're just having dinner, and just let's have fun, you know? Let's just wait until Hip does his job, and then we'll do whatever. So he likes to just enjoy life. And here it's a similar sort of thing. So maybe the gun barrel is this nice, subtle way of linking that. You know, he just walks and just very casually, dun 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 dun. That's okay. I love that. I love that. And also the music is very different. It doesn't start with the da 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 da. It's very much the dun dun. What is it? Da 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 da. Right? It becomes, in that way, it becomes almost linked, if you will, with something like what we saw that, right, in the Brosnan era, with Tomorrow Never Dies, for example. So it's a very interesting way to introduce it, and so I guess I'm still waiting for the return, not of that kind of da da, but I guess I'm waiting for the return of the Dr. No way of introducing the gun barrel. You know, I guess I'll wait for that day if it comes in any future Bond film. But in any event, here we have the new gun barrel, and then we have the music that accompanies it. Incidentally, it's Marvin Hamlisch's score, which is very interesting, and I'll get to that when we talk about the pre-credits, which is right now. And so we get the submarine, and we get the British submarine, and and then cut, except the voice. Oh my God, it's great stuff, great stuff. And then we have Benson or George Baker, and so right, so which is great to see George Baker here. And we have M and Moneypenny, and we have the what is it? We have also glimpses into Gogol's and Moscow, and right, this is the first time we're seeing Gogol, and won't be the last time that we're going to see Gogol. And so, and he says on, you know, the submarine Potemkin, I think, has disappeared, and he has his own secretary, right? What's her name? Rubelvich, which I think is a very similar play, very much like Moneypenny is here, Rubelvich. So that's very funny. And then we have the whole thing with their top spy, Agent Triple X, and Then we have in bed with well, we're not, I guess we're meant to not quite know yet, right? Michael Billington and Barbara Bach are in the scene, and I think the idea is that people maybe are expecting that the agent, Triple X, or the top agent, will be the man, but in fact it is Amasova, Anya Amasova, the female character here. So this is and that starts, I think, a very interesting dynamic in the film to follow, which is the relationship between Bond and Amasova. Right, so then we have Michael Billington, and then we go back to Bond in, I think it's Austria, and he's in a lodge, a ski lodge or something, and he gets called in, and right, with that very famous exchange, but James, I need you. So does England. Da-da. And then so he goes out, but right, he is going to be chased by, right, it ends up being the same person who was in bed in an intimate moment with Major Amasova, and so Michael Billington. So, and therein lies the start of the ski chase, which is great for a number of reasons. So let's talk about this. Okay. So I don't know about you, but I could never match in my mind that the guy who was in bed with Amasova was the same guy who was the leader of the people who are wearing black ski jumpsuits in the ski chase at the pre-credits. I know they're meant to be the same person. I know, but I could never, I don't know, I could never see it. They feel like different people to me. Maybe it's the lighting, I'm not sure. Maybe it's the brightness of the outdoors, of the snow, I'm not sure. But I understand that they're meant to be the same, because that leads into a very key plot point. Okay, so there's that, and of course we have to be sure that we understand who he is, because he doesn't have ski poles. He's using some kind of short-nosed revolver or something in order to try to shoot Bond. So in fact, he seems to be, this is like Willy Bogner level in terms of like prowess on skis, right? I mean, I'm terrible. I can't ski, and someone from my vantage point who can't ski, I mean, to have someone who's skiing at high speed with a gun, without any ski poles, right, chasing Bond is very impressive. So that's very interesting. Although it would have been maybe a little bit easier perhaps for me to be able to register that these two men were in fact the same person if we'd given them something, maybe like a mustache. I think if they had a mustache, Michael Billington's character had a mustache, that would have been really, really great in order to be able to further establish that this is indeed the lover of Major Amasova. And it would have been really cool. It would have been another mustache character, a la From Russia with Love at the very beginning, and we'll talk about that when we get there. But okay, so we have that. Then we have, of course, the wonderful look. I'm sorry, to take a step back. Then we have, of course, in essence, the return of a ski Bond. Because we saw the last time in a Bond film skis or ski chase in, if I recall correctly, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, and so we get a great ski Bond here. It's not for the entirety of the film, and it's certainly not for the duration of the film in the same length of time that we saw in, say, on Her Majesty's Secret Service, but it's still very memorable and very fresh and exciting. Really cool stuff. There are so many cool moments about this, okay? Right? So first is the look of Bond, the yellow and the red. It's really, really great. And there's a great moment when you have the skis. It goes like this, and it starts the Bond 77 thing, like bow, 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 bow. And then you see it cuts to Roger. It's so obvious, a back screen projection, but it doesn't matter because it's smooth and it looks so cool, right? And then bam, 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 and then he goes down, and then you see the people in black, right? Let's go now, and then it starts the music. It's not just the bam, 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 but it's the bow, right? So I love that. That's so. It has this, right? As I say, it's very famous for the disco feel, and then it proceeds off, and then some really cool moments here. For example, when they go into that little ravine, that little ice ravine, I love the look when the leader, which we assume is the Major Masuva's lover, he goes in where the others, his accomplices, go around. So there's something of a graceful move as how he moves as the others go around behind him. I don't know, I just love that grace of that flow of characters on skis. And I love the way that it cuts to Roger Moore's Bond with his ski goggles on, dun 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 dun, and he starts he triggers the trigger in the ski pole and turns around and boom, and then bum bum bum, and then the quick close up to the guy. And even in the close up, it's still not clear to me, are they the same guy or not? I think they are because of the close up, but I still can't tell. But anyway, so they're meant to be the same character, I think. But and then, of course, it goes into the now iconic jump and the long wait until we get the reveal of the parachute and the Union Jack and and we get another parachute scene in a Lewis Gilbert film. If you recall earlier, we had a very famous or infamous parachute scene involving Helga Brandt and parachuting in front of, in essence, a crashing airplane or an airplane on fire. So that was a very interesting use of projection. Here, I think we get really an exciting use of dynamic close-up of Roger Moore, and the camera does that little thing of, excuse me here, it looks like dun 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 dun, like that kind of thing. So I love that. That's so great. That really is an effective use of this sort of foreground background stuff. It's very effective. So, and then it goes into the what is it? The credits, right? Dun, 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 dun. So that's nice. It's almost like the hands are treating the parachute like a flower or something, and it's nice because it has a delicate sense about it, which is very much in keeping with the delicate nature of the song and the opening there and the piano, which is great, and then it goes into the song. And so before I move on, I'm just say also the music beats here are really, I think, very fun. I'm not sure what people's take is on, say, the Bond 77 theme and the very driving Bee Gees-esque type of thrust to it. Bow, 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 bow. But it's certainly different from what we got, say, in the John Barry film score universe. I mean, it's very much unique in itself, although it borrows, of course, the theme, and it uses it very effectively. And that close-up of Roger when it kicks in, the dun 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 dun, one of the coolest Roger moments, I think. Really, really, he looks so awesome in that moment. And then the thing about the score, which da 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 da. That thing, that bill thing. What is that called? I'm not sure what that's called in music. Some kind of like, but if you know the soundtrack, I don't know about you, but I also got the soundtrack on CD, and I don't know the soundtrack history. Were there other recordings or maybe bootlegs of the actual record, right? Because the official soundtrack was a different rendition of the same Bond 77 theme, and so it's not quite the same as what we saw in the ski chase here, right? Because, for example, the boom comes in a slightly different point in the song, right? Dun 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 da 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 boom, right? In the CD soundtrack or the album soundtrack, whereas in the film, it's dun 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 da 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 da. Dun. So it comes a little bit later in the rhythm there. But again, please forgive me, I'm not a musicologist. But and then in the album version, we get the extended piece of it, right? And we don't get anything like that in the film. Right? I think we get a little bit of the saxophone thing, I think, in the underwater chase with the Thunderball-esque type of underwater chase with the Lotus, but outside of the underground portions of Atlantis. But I think we get a little bit of that the saxophone, I think it is, but we really get that in the album, but we didn't get that portion in the film elsewhere, which I really liked actually. The that bit. So if anyone knows of the soundtrack history availability, please let me know. But let me see, what else would I want to say about the opening? I think that's it. Right. I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it for now. Well, again, let me just go to the oh, and then it goes into the opening credits, and so the opening credits, right? And then Morris Binder's opening credits, and we get this is, to me, I think, that look of the opening credits that is very much the type of opening credits that we will see all the way up to the end of the Roger Moore era. And because of the font that's used, I mean, I don't know what the font name is, but this is a different type of font style than what we saw in the titles used for Live and Let Die and The Man with the Golden Gun. And this font style, I dare say, is the same or very, very similar type of font style that will be used from here on in, all the way up to A View to a Kill, I think. So that lends itself, I think, for me, a nice sense of continuity as far as the credits are concerned. Also, there's a moment where Roger Moore does a little thing. He's shown in the credits, and so he appears. And so that's also very cool. I don't think he appeared in terms of an image in Live and Let Die and The Man with the Golden Gun. So he appears here, and that's really cool. Also, we notice the placement of Ian Fleming's name, how it's used. Is it used, right? Ian Fleming's James Bond 007, right? So, and then, so there's that. The one thing I don't well, there are a couple things that I thought were really interesting about the credits, right? So, if you note the bit where it says, it introduces the title, right? And it says, it doesn't go like The Spy Who Loved Me, or doesn't like reveal it like The Spy Who Loved Me. It goes like, it's the part where it's in the song. It's like nobody does it half as good as you. Da-da-da-da-dun. Baby, you're the. So around that moment, it says The Spy Who Loved Me. It has that weird staccato way, like me, and it's not even perfect in terms of its rhythm. It's right? So I never understood that. Sometimes, if it's possible, the title will emerge at around the same time as the title when it's sung in the song, like in Thunderball. So he strikes like Thunderball, right? So it does that when it can. But here there's not that instance, so I'm not sure exactly what was that. That always suggested to me the possibility of maybe there was another song, but and maybe there had been another song, The Spy Who Loved Me, but I don't know. But I never really understood. I don't know what the details are about the reasoning behind that choice, but. If anyone knows that, please let me know. But there's that. Also, there's a little bit where it's very like these titles usually were very good at suggesting or hiding the nudity of the models that were appearing in these titles, right? But because they, strategically have someone who is obviously a naked model, but then suddenly, she'd be appearing, and then suddenly it would be like or something like a rice, whatever is like a lily pad or something like, or a flower would appear here, or strategically here, or you know what I mean? But in some moments of the titles, A Spy Who Loved Me, there are some obvious moments of female nudity. So it's like, oh wow, okay, so and maybe that was not caught, or maybe it was intentional, but it just happens for an instant. So there's some really interesting, maybe. In terms of the Morris Binder titles sequences, there's some pretty groundbreaking things that are happening here. Yep, very interesting stuff. Very interesting. So, let's see. Okay. Hancock says Blofeld was the original villain of the script, but Kevin McClory obtained an injunction which prevented the production from using the character Spectre. And also, yes, and also it meant that in order to avoid any legal entanglements going forward, all not just preventing, but also causing the powers that be to want to avoid any mentions of Spectre where possible. But yes, it does lead us to the conversation that Stromberg is very much like a Blofeld type of villain. He likes to watch monitors, he likes to push buttons, he likes to walk slowly, and he just likes to sit down and talk about killing while throwing things into a pond, so there's that, yeah. One of the things that I always was curious about, and I think I was able at last to find the answer. In fact, I think last night as I was watching the film for the upteenth time again. But, okay, Stromberg is a very classic villain. I don't know if he's considered a favorite by a lot of people, but he's still considered a classic villain. And he has the villain demeanor about him, and he's got, of course, where I suppose are webbed fingers, although it doesn't really register that well. Because I never noticed it until much later in my watching of the film. Oh, they're webbed fingers or something. But I think we're supposed to, maybe the idea was maybe he was either born with this physical trait, or he had it applied as a kind of plastic surgery type of thing in order to make him closer to the things that he loved, which were the aquatic life, again, under the sea. So whatever the case may be, he has these hands, right? And then, so that's why I think he doesn't like to shake hands. It's the third button, and so, which is weird. I don't know, why did Bond go and shake his hand? Was it to purposely provoke him, or he just simply forgot? I don't know. He forgot that, but he didn't forget that species of fish, so that was good. But what was I saying? So Stromberg, yeah. So Stromberg is an interesting one because he's interesting because of his demeanor. He's great wealth. He's in this huge, weird-looking. Wonderful, weird-looking design that is Atlantis. Not just the design itself with its legs; it looks like this cross between, a giant spider and like a War of the Worlds design. But it's also, all the way down to its escape. Its little escape pod. Its escape pod is like a little mini Atlantis. So I like it. It's a very cute. It's like I like that. It's a little baby Atlantis that's floating in the sea there. So there's Stromberg there, and he's surrounded by wealth and luxury, and the elevator can open up and drop someone into the shark tank, and he can cause helicopters to explode, right? So poor Dr. Beckman and Professor Markovitz, right? My goodness. $10 million each, right? So, but they were a little bit eager. Maybe they're too eager when they're in a helicopter. I mean, right when they're shaking hands, they were really shaking hands in the helicopter, like they're so happy, and boom, right? And it's not just them; it was the helicopter pilot too. So it was. Stromberg was saying, please inform the next of kin that a tragic accident has resulted in the deaths of Dr. Beckman and Professor Markovitz. The funeral was at sea. But what about the pilot? The pilot, too, would have had next of kin, right? So say something about the pilot, too, right? Come on, Stromberg. But anyway, so there's Stromberg and all these traits. So one of the things I always thought I could never quite get was, so Stromberg is seen killing these two experts in the helicopter explosion, and he's seen killing his assistant. But when Bond and Amasova visit Atlantis around the middle of the film, right, and with the introduction of Naomi, and Mr. Stromberg has asked me to collect you, and what is right? His name is Sterling, and he's pretending to be a marine biologist. What does he say? He says, you know, where there's an ocean, a marine biologist is never on holiday. And then they go meet Stromberg, and they have that great introduction with the Marvin Hamlisch music, and that's one of my favorite Marvin the themes, and the da na 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 na. That's great stuff. But and then the introduction of Naomi, of course, which we'll get to. Wow, my goodness! And so the what is that? What is he? So when Bond says, you know, wherever there's an ocean, a marine biologist is never on holiday. And it came after the fact, of course. I don't know if is anyone out there a fan of the show Seinfeld? Do you know the show Seinfeld? If you do, there is a character there named George Costanza. And George Costanza, there was an episode where George Costanza was trying to impress a lady friend by essentially lying and saying that he was a marine biologist where he wasn't. So he was essentially, one of the plots of one of the stories or the sitcom was him pretending to be a marine biologist. And then there came a point where he's walking on the beach and so is there, you know, right? So is anyone out there a marine biologist? And so I always, whenever now I see this scene and Bond pretending to be Sterling, was it Robert Sterling, the marine biologist? I always think of George Costanza from Seinfeld, and I think, my goodness, maybe if George Costanza had pretended to be a marine biologist, he could have just as easily infiltrated the Atlantis the station, just as Bond did, because he pretended to be a marine biologist. So that was very interesting. So in any event, so going back to the world of Bond, we have this moment, right, where he goes into the Atlantis, and it's an interesting meeting. They don't talk, Stromberg and Sterling or Bond don't talk business, they just meet, and Stromberg says, actually, I have to go, I have other business to attend to, so please go away. And then he allows Bond and Massimo to go back onto the boat, and then back to shore. So what always struck me as being odd was, why did Stromberg, he knew that these were the same people that attacked Jaws on the train, right, and in Egypt, but and then he knows that these are agents, right, from their respective governments. So if that's the case, then he knows that they are enemies of his. If that's the case, then why did he wait until he let them get onto shore before he wanted to kill them? Right? That's one of the great traits of a Bond villain. I have you in my clutches, and I know you're my enemy. So instead of killing you now, I will let you go free onto the shore and use these elaborate means of killing you that I'm sure cost a lot of time and money. But no matter, I want to kill you. So instead of killing you, like opening the elevator thing, or it may be causing the boat to explode, or something like, no, I'll wait until you're safely on shore in your own environment, and I'll hire a bunch of people in a car to chase you. Jaws as well, I'll hire to chase you in this very elaborate, loud manner. Also, I'll hire a motorcycle with a rocket to try to kill you, and I'll have Naomi, my faithful assistant, try to attack you with a helicopter. So I really want to kill you, so I'll just wait until you're on shore and then handle it. Okay. So that always was that, right? I was going to say didn't ring true. I don't quite mean it that way, but it's one of those things, right, of a Bond film. But why would he do that? Why would he let them go on to shore, let them get ashore, and then kill them, right? So and then let them get ashore. Okay, so why would he do that? The only way I could defend Stromberg's choice here is perhaps because, and again, I haven't really thought of it, but maybe it was because we know that pretty soon after these events, Stromberg's Leparis will essentially get the third submarine and then cause the two submarines that have already been taken to be launched out and then have the rockets or the missiles shot. So we know that the implementation of this plan is actually quite quite close in terms of proximity, in terms of days. So maybe Stromberg thought maybe it was the old Goldfinger thing, where you want to be sure that there is no suspicion that arises around the time that your plot is about to be hatched, right? Because if that occurs, then that will arouse the suspicions of the various governments onto you. So if they were reported to go to Atlantis and they didn't report back to their governments, maybe that would have caused their governments to sound the alarm and then attack Atlantis before Stromberg would launch his plan to have the missile shot. So maybe it was the old Goldfinger thing, is have them get ashore and then kill them, which meant that no suspicions would have been arisen with respect to Atlantis. So that could have been it. If that were the case, though, then it really went to nothing, because they were very conspicuous ways of trying to kill them, obviously, and also it led to further examination, and also it was too late, because as we know in the car ride, Bond already contacted M to ask M to investigate the Lapars, because the front shape of the ship looked a little bit strange to Bond, which then leads to the idea that the ship is in fact an outer casing that opens up, like so, in order to capture submarines. And so we already get that Bond already contacted M about the Lapars, which is interesting. It's interesting. When did he contact M? I'm not sure, but he did. So he contacted M already. With his suspicions. So if they were so now they're even more suspicious now that Stromberg is going to attack them. So in fact, the attack was for naught. It probably would have been better for Stromberg just to keep them there, or maybe have them maybe in a holding cell or something until the plan was already implemented. That way it could have been just a simple, that would have been the Goldfinger way to go. So this is perhaps, I said it's a Goldfinger way, but it's not even the Goldfinger way. It's more like a half-baked Goldfinger way. He lets them go, but it's already given Bond enough time to already contact M, and he tries to kill them in these elaborate ways, which actually also brings further attention to the fact that Bond and Amasova should be investigating Stromberg further. So I don't see the whole point. It would have been more strategically sound from Stromberg's point of view to keep them. But oh well, it's part of the fun of the film. I get it. So, and yeah, there's that. So okay. Sorry about that. Let's see. Yeah, Damful says what Spy represents is a rebirth for the series. This was Cubby's, Albert Broccoli's Cubby's make or break moment. Yes, for the series to continue the long pre-production and more lavish budget. You're absolutely right. Yes. The creative processes were challenged on many fronts here. Let's see. Yeah, Hanok mentions Steven Spielberg was asked to do it in terms of finding a director. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Just scrolling down here. Hanok says, speaking of the 1975 movie, which is Jaws, which I think is coming from the discussion of Spielberg here, isn't it funny that the name was borrowed from the filmmakers to give the supposed character more depth? Jaws. Right. There's a character in the novel, right? What's his name? Horror. It's interesting. Yeah, his name is not Horror. It's Jaws. I like Jaws here. I mentioned it earlier, but I like there's Sandor. There's the short. The short but happy life of Mr. Sandor, and then the long, right, in the words of High Fat, Jaws lives a long, happy life. And so We have Jaws and Sandor as the main henchmen of Stromberg. Well, I suppose we should mention Jaws, Sandor, and Naomi as the main hench persons of Stromberg here. But and also George Leach too, I think. But anyway, but yeah, so we should speak about Jaws here. So Jaws, and the introduction of Jaws is, of course, one of the iconic villains in James Bond film history. Richard Keel's performance is magnificent here. It's a silent performance here, and of course we will see him return in Moonraker, and which we've already spoken about in a live stream, by the way. But so we have Jaws and his menace, and he is like this cross between this robot giant and vampire, and not just that, he is very intelligent. He is so intelligent, so he is this huge menace that is physically like just, you can't beat him, and he's unstoppable, and he won't die, and he's smart, right? He's strategic when, for example, when he is trying to, and he's patient, so he's got all the traits of really dangerous villain. I mean, I can't imagine how long did Jaws wait in that closet in the train before Anya Amasova was attacked. How long must he have waited in there for? Gosh, would it have been maybe an hour? I don't know. My goodness. Or I mean, who waits longer in closets? Is it Jaws on the train, or is it Goodnight in the hotel room? So Goodnight, how long did she wait in the closet there? It was 2 hours. So if Jaws waited for more than 2 hours on the train, so he beats Goodnight in the waiting in the closet territory there. But in any event, he was very patient. And he was still, and he was just waiting for the right moment, and just, you know, and when he wouldn't have known that she would have opened the door, right? Because you can't really see, I think, from inside the closet. So she opens it, and it's like, and then wow, and he's ready to strike. So it's not just waiting; he's waiting for the door to open, and when the door opens, he's gonna strike. So his reflexes are also very quick. His reaction time is very quick. And he shows, he knows what's going on. So he knows, for instance, when Bond and Amasova are talking about him in the van as he's driving off after Kalba has been killed. And so we've got that great moment, one of my favorite Roger Moore moments, when the beautiful music is coming on, and Amasova sleeps, drifts off, and her head nods and goes against Roger's shoulder, then, and he puts his hand around it, and she wakes up. He does that thing, right? He's like, it's a great moment. What a great Roger moment. I love that. You know, but and then they arrive. But then Jaws was listening in, and he was smiling, so he knows he's almost one step ahead of them. I mean, literally, he's one step ahead of them. He's being followed by them, but he's very strategic, and not just that, he is not afraid to get his hands dirty. And one of also my favorite Jaws moments is when he's being attacked by Amasova and Bond here. So it's 2 against 1, but he's holding his own, and she has the gun. Says, "Don't move." And I like how suddenly her accent becomes this American accent. "Don't move," when she pulls out the gun, right? And she says, "The microfilm, give it to me." And then what he does is he's like, "I'm not going to give you the microfilm. I'm going to throw it on the ground. You pick up the microfilm, right? You have the gun. You pick up the microfilm. I've been working so hard. I've been driving. I'm tired. You say, give me the mic. I'm saying, you pick it up yourself." So he throws the microfilm down. He doesn't actually say that, of course. He's silent, but he just throws it. And he's like, and then that's strategic too, because that he's waiting for her to look down, and then so he can kick the gun away from her, and then very he's always thinking, which begs the question: what was Bond doing at that moment? You'd think that Bond would have been waiting or trying to get the microfilm, so maybe he could have gotten the microfilm first, but of course we understand that they are rivals at this point, Amasova and Bond, so maybe that was the whole thing. That was why she had to get it, not him. But this is the whole going to say that Jaws is a thinking villain, and who is unstoppable and villainous, and he becomes also almost this comic book figure in that he can't be killed, and he seems also to be almost the butt of some jokes. It becomes more pronounced in the next film, Moonraker, of course, but there are moments, right, where, for instance, he's carrying the stone and he drops it, and I'm not sure if it meant that he was hurt when he dropped it, which we assume is on his foot. Was he hurt? Or was it like, oh, I just hit my foot or something. Oh, I'm not sure what it is, because I'm not sure if he feels pain. If he doesn't feel pain, then it would stand to reason that he didn't feel pain when he dropped the stone on his foot. So that meant that the reaction that he had was just merely, oh, I've dropped something on my foot. But if it was pain, then maybe, okay, maybe he feels pain. I'm not sure. But he becomes this comic character. The car rams into the house there, and then he just walks out and just like, what are you looking at, buddy? I'm just going on my way, and then he's thrown out of the train. But he's after he's thrown out of the train by Bond, he just looks up and he brushes himself up and walks off and just lives to fight another day. And also in Egypt, right? He's stranded. After the van drives away, he's stranded out in the desert, right? So I don't know how he got back, but remember, there's some desert scenes that we'll see. There's some pretty intense desert scenes in, say, Quantum of Solace that we'll see later, with Bond and a character named Dominic Green. And so, Dominic Green should have taken some lessons from Jaws as to how to walk in a desert and how to get out of the desert, because Jaws is able to get out of the desert and live to fight another day. He is that resilient. He's so powerful, and he knows, right? Oh my God! And the way he attacks, he's just a vampire, right? And he just uses his jaws to bite people. Wow, what a scary premise that is. So, all in all, right, iconic status, but deservedly so, and regarded by many as one of the iconic villains for good reason, because he is. And he's not just a hulking villain. He is a villain that thinks, and he's strategic, and he will never, ever give up. So he is totally dedicated to his mission, even where he might fail. This is interesting too. It could be said that he failed in a lot of respects. Maybe it could be said he let the microfilm get away. Maybe it could be said that he let Bond and Amasova get away. But still, time and time again, Stromberg relies on him. So if Stromberg is still able to rely on him, given the fact that, right, even Stromberg says, I'm not renowned for my patience. He is still patient with Jaws, which is very much suggestive of the fact that Jaws has a big reputation in the villainy world, right? He's so famous. Even Drax knows him, right? Oh, if you can get him, of course, right? In the next film, Moonraker. So in any event, so that's Jaws, and I love the bit when he's in Cairo, or the pyramid show, and it's the light shines on him, and it does it twice. That's great stuff. And then the music's going. And I love the run. I love the Jaws run, which is great. It would have been nice to see Jaws and Pierce Brosnan's Bond together in a film. It would have been nice if Pierce Brosnan was always running like this, and then Jaws is like, no, I'm just gonna run. It's not a problem, I'm gonna make it anyway. So what do I care? I don't have to get there so quickly. So I love that. So it would be Pierce like running, but it was just, I was like, no, I'm taking my time. So it's great stuff. But oh gosh, what was I going to say? Oh, yes, and of course, the end, the way that Jaws is apparently defeated is by shark, although it's the twist on the shark. So it's in essence Jaws attacking Jaws. Although we must say that the shark it doesn't look as menacing. Apart from the fact that it's a shark, it seems almost like a kitty cat. It's like a cat swimming. It just happens to be a shark. And so, I like when the shark is apparently trying to eat that woman, you can tell the shark is kind of, it's not really eating the woman. It's more like cuddling up against, like, let's play kind of thing. So it seems like a very friendly type of shark, but in any event, it's supposed to represent a really menacing thing, right? So the idea is Jaws turns the tables on the shark, and so Jaws kills Jaws. So that's an interesting thing. But anyway, so that's Jaws. Yeah. And of course, James Bond will return, not in For Your Eyes Only, of course, but in Moonraker, and as will Jaws. So, anyway. How are we on time, by the way? Okay, good. Yeah, Damfool says Ian Fleming didn't want his novel adapted. Yeah, as it had gotten a lot of flack and it was very low key. Yeah, so if you know the novel, you'll know it's unlike the film. So, yeah, that set aside from one objectionable line. It's a great novel with a great heroine. Yeah, I know what you're talking about here. But Zyros is talking about the 007 soundstage. Yep. And I love the. Oops, am I? Oh gosh. Sorry, here we go. I did it again with the chat here, so. Okay, now this live chat, you know, I'm scrolling down, and then I was about to go to the next, and suddenly it dropped me to the very bottom, and I have to scroll back up, and I can't go to where I was last, so I'm skipping over a bunch here. That's a real shame. Let's see here. So I'm at the point now where Cooper Glover 1972 says, that does not justify mass murder. So you're talking about the dialogue between Amasova and Stromberg in the Leparis control room. Right, I'm merely accelerating the process. For that, I will leave that up to the judgment of posterity. And I love how Stromberg says, he doesn't say it here, but he says it later when the Leparis captain is reporting the activity on the Leparis. We have everything under control. No need to worry. Yes, and we hope that you will incur no further mishap. Right? And I loved how Stromberg says the word mishap in that. As I said, when I saw this film when I was young, and so the word mishap was not part of my regular vocabulary when I was a kid. So I was fascinated by that. Also, I was fascinated by, this is another Shane Rimmer Bond film, of course. We've seen, and it's by all accounts probably the biggest Shane Rimmer role in any Bond film. So that's a plus in the category here as far as what makes this Bond film great. There have been many ways to categorize Bond films. For instance, the Guy Hamilton, the Tom Mankiewicz era, or the John Glenn era, or by actor, Sean Connery, Roger Moore Bonds, of course, Pierce Brosnan, now Daniel Craig, or maybe by director, or sometimes by theme or by atmosphere. So sometimes people classify the ski Bonds together. Sometimes people classify the more sort of serious Bond films. On Her Majesty's Spy falls into that as well in terms of the plot line with Tracy. So On Her Majesty's Spy, License to Kill, etc. And perhaps even Casino Royale falls somewhat in that grouping. But also, as I said, Ski Bond, so On Her Majesty's sort of Spy, The World Is Not Enough, also For Your Eyes Only, of course. But so there are many ways to categorize Bond films, but another way to categorize them is the Shane Rimmer Bond films. So you have the great Shane Rimmer, the Shane Rimmer Bond films, and here is he is great as the captain, right? I love, he's so great, and I love how he runs down. He's like, get back to the ship, pass it on. I love that. That's such a great moment. Pass it on, and he gets his crew on the ship, but he leaves a couple people behind. They're swimming in the water, like, wait for me. But he's like, no, let's go. And he's just like, he leaves these people. But anyway, it's the panic of the moment. I get it. There would have been enough time to do a account of all the people there, and right, there were people who died in the fights, so like, I get that, but still, that's a horrifying moment. But anyway, Shane Rimmer, so another Shane Rimmer James Bond film. But in any, what was I saying? So what was my point? What was I trying to say? What was I trying to say? Why was I saying this? Well, gosh, I just completely lost my point because I was so absorbed by the greatness that is Shane Rimmer in a Bond film. But anyway, yeah, let's yeah, I'll leave that to the judgment of posterity. Okay, let's see. Let's see. What was that? What was I want to? I know I was planning to say something. Gosh. Let's see. Oh yes, that's right. That's right. See, I just remembered. So when I was a kid, I was watching this film and other Bond films and other films in general, and of course they were saying a lot of words that I didn't understand at the time, or that weren't part of my ordinary vocabulary as a kid growing up. But things like mishap was really cool. And also Shane Rimmer says, when Bond is saying, "I want you to program this to have this ship change its target coordinates so it shoots on the other ship," and then Shane Rimmer says, "and vice versa." Exactly. So when he says vice versa, when I was a kid and I saw that for the first time, I didn't know what the phrase vice versa meant. So he said, and vice versa. And so I was thinking, what is he saying in that moment? And then, oh no, so he's saying vice versa. And so from that point on in my life, whenever I have encountered or have used the phrase vice versa, I always think of Shane Rimmer and The Spy Who Loved Me, because I remember that in terms of my conscious memory, that was the first time I remember encountering actively the phrase vice versa. And so yeah, so there is that. Yeah. Let's see. So, okay. Erwin says there really is no reason keeping the submarine crew alive. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, right, we understand that the Stromberg was able, in a very frightening way, to use what he says was cyanide gas, which is actually a really scary thing to think about. But so yeah, so there's no reason to keep them alive. Maybe there would have been some reliance on them, because after all, as I'm sure as well equipped as Stromberg's own crew is, you never know what might happen with a nuclear submarine, I suppose. But in any event, yeah, so maybe that was the reason to keep them alive. And also, they are, of course, they are his hostages, so he can also use that to his advantage. But one thing I never understood about that is, why did he keep his crew alive? And he had this huge, or why did Stromberg keep those ship's crews alive and hostage, or in captivity? Excuse me. But and Stromberg had this whole huge crew himself, but he left the armory pretty much unguarded, right? Wow, that was should have had more guards on the armory, right? In the Leparis, right? And in fact, the captain or commander of the Leparis, at one point when the blinds shut, and he says, "You stand guard over there," right? And he says, and the guy runs. He just runs here and he goes here. I don't quite understand why you needed another guard there. But in any event, so he runs. So he was willing to say to the guards, "Go guard somewhere else." So he should have been saying that to the guards earlier on and say, You, go to the armory and guard the armory. So that would have led to, that would have prevented, or possibly prevented, all the chaos and mishap that ended up happening on the ship to begin with. So, yeah, so, oh well. Well, yeah, that's the way things go, I suppose. So, but it leads, of course, to the epic battle between the Stromberg side and the joint forces of the crews, and there's there are some great moments there, like we see some really interesting body action in terms of the way people throw grenades. There's the moment like where the guy, it's the guy, right? It's the same guy who was looking at Major Amasova in the showers. Like, what's the matter, Sally? Haven't you seen a major take a shower before? Like, like that's, I think it's the same guy. It's like, da, 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 and he throws the grenade. He's like, I'm about to throw the grenade. Da, 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 I'm about to throw the grenade, and he throws it, and it doesn't do anything, of course. But okay, so there's that. That's a great moment, and then also a great moment is when the British captain gets killed and is second in command or something, and says, I'm afraid your captain is again. He's just looking at like, he's like, oh, leave it to me, sir. I'll get through. And he goes up, and apparently he's so, maybe he's now in charge, I think. I'm not sure, because the captain has now been killed. Now he's like, follow me, let's go. And he dies and stuff. So that was his one shot at being the leader, but it ended up being a terrible plan because it had no strategy except just running into something and with a machine gun. It didn't have any strategy at all. So I don't quite understand that. So, but that's an interesting moment. I think it's commented on the commentary, like they oh, but I'm afraid your captain is dead. Nothing. But anyway, crickets, right? But anyway, the and also we get the another Roger Moore hand grenade throwing moment. So you have the one guy throwing the grenade at the car, the little Jeep there, driving through the La Paris, or inside the La Paris, and he doesn't do it. And then Bond throws it at just a precise moment, and it blows up, and then the Jeep falls into the water, and we get that sound effect of the scream, like, ah! I can't replicate it, but it's the same scream. I don't know what it's called in the sound recording universe. It's not the what's known as the Wilhelm scream. It's not that, but it's the same scream that we hear used when during the astronaut battle in Moonraker, when you see the people after they're shot by the lasers, they fall into what I assume is like a supernova in space, and they're falling, and we see all the astronauts falling, and like, ah! So we hear a scream that it's the same scream that we heard here in The Spy Who Loved Me. So maybe it's the same guy who was fighting in the La Paris, and he survived the Jeep falling into the water, and he swam back to shore, and he decided, I'm unemployed, so I need to find employment. Who's hiring? He looks and he sees Drax is hiring for astronauts, and so maybe he got hired by Drax, went through the astronaut training program, just like many others that we see in front of Drax's estate. He's trained, he's part of Drax's crew, he goes up, and then when the fighting happens in Drax's space station between Drax's men and and Colonel Scott and his army in space with space lasers that seem to be borrowed, that seem to be the exact same technology by Q, but oh well. So anyway, so they fight, and so maybe that guy who worked all the way from being the driver or whoever in this little bit in the Jeep in the La Paris, worked all the way in another organization only to be shot and fall into a supernova in Moonraker. But oh well. Or maybe it's not the same guy. Okay. There's a lot of cross sectioning of that as well. A lot of ways that these things carry over. I get that. So anyway, yeah. Oh, and speaking of the fight in the tanker, another great moment is, of course, when Bond is having to take out, what is that thing called? Is it the impulse? Gosh, my memory is failing me. The impulse. Oh gosh, what's that thing called? The impulse conductor circuit. Is that right? The impulse conductor circuit. That ring that's magnetic, and he can't touch it, because if he touches it, then it's gonna the bomb is gonna blow up. Right, and so he says, when he unlodges it, when Bond unlodges it, when he's trying to basically take the explosive component of this missile out of the missile shell, right? What does he say when he dislodges and he realizes the magnet? He says, "Blast!" That's a great right. The last thing you want to say to people who are just looking at you like, please don't drop it, please don't, right? Everyone's just looking at him, don't drop it. And when he says blast, that's the last word I would have chosen. But of course, Bond is doing all the work. I'm not, so I can I can forgive him that. But maybe say, oh darn, or oh no, or shoot. Well, shoot probably wouldn't be good as well, but blast. Oh gosh. And then so no wonder people around him were nervous and gulping, like, You really get a lot of gulping acting here. And Shane Rimmer's look is what, like, I love how his mouth is open. And then even the bit where the sound effect, there's some great sound effects here, but that sound effect when it gets close, like, that is a great sound effect. That's so cool. Yeah, so anyway, yeah, okay. Blast. When you're trying to disarm a bomb, you say the word blast. Okay. And I love how it's in this huge, intense moment. Oh, blast! And what is it? Impulse conductor circuit, I think. Please correct me. So I mustn't touch any part of the impulse conductor circuit. Huh? And I love how the guy's like, this ring houses the impulse conductor circuit, sir. It's magnetic. I love how he's just, the necessary exposition guy is standing right there. It's like, oh, in case you don't know, this entire thing is magnetic, and if you touch it, it's going to blow. So I love that. And he's like, oh, and Bond's like, I've got to just do this. I've got to do it. I can't, it's a magnetic, it'll blow up, it'll go off. And the guy's like, oh, this ring is, so it's a great combination between the two. In terms of exposition of information. Let's see. Damien says, what gets me to this day, did Stromberg forget to send one of his divers in to clean away the hand we see of the poor lady, or did he want any guests to know early on that he's clearly crazy? Yeah, the hand, yeah, that's a really creepy moment. And like, I love Roger's double take. It's like, the pigeon double take in Moonraker. It's like, huh? It's like, that's a great moment. Yeah, that's a great Roger moment. And the Roger moment when he's caught for a minute and not knowing what the fish is, and he's like, yeah, oh yeah, and he's able to recall. That's one of the great things about this moment of Roger Moore's performance, is that this is very much a keeping with the Bond that we know, the Ian Fleming Bond, because Ian Fleming Bond was always, he was studying up on things, and he was preparing, so he's always on top of preparing and his information. And so I love that aspect of this particular performance. It's great. Roger Moore here is fantastic, by the way, isn't he? He is just, my goodness, he is so great. Urwan says, Stromberg comes across as such a narcissist that he creates that new world only for himself. Yes, Under the Sea. Diamfool, the big difference in the film is that the villain here is truly insane and cannot be reached. That's the big clincher to get audiences. So when Bond asks, how much do you want? It's a big moment. Yes. How much? Yes. Right. It's right. Although, right, Drax is arguably on the same level of villainy and being totally unhinged in terms of his own plot. And yet we see Drax in terms not just of he has different phases of his plan. So phase 1 is implementation, phase 2 is execution, and phase 3 is preparation. So phase 1 is implementation of the rockets going into space, and then phase 2, or the preparation of the poison, and then phase 2 is implementing it and or executing it in terms of launching the globes, the globes. It's great. And then phase 3 is creating the new human race with that. So we've seen that, but here with Stromberg, we've only seen arguably maybe phase 2, I think, but not phase 3. But they're equally as unhinged. So Drax doesn't want any money as well, and plus they already have all the wealth that they need. So they don't need any ransom. Unlike Blofeld, of course, Blofeld has to pretend to be, counts, or he has to. He needs his plot is for ransom and for money, and so in terms of the diamond satellite and that sort of. So anyway. Cooper, and I am he, the Pharaoh. Yes. Okay. Now, Oh, Damful says the Russians aren't there, talking about the crew in the Liparis. Yes. And it took me a long time to realize that it must mean that they chose death rather than giving up the sub. That's interesting. Although that would go against their training protocol if we remember Anya Amasova's training in Siberia, and they have to keep a positive attitude and they have to maintain shared bodily warmth. And so, right? So in that situation, if they had all been in the same Siberia training, they would have to keep a positive mental attitude or something like that. So I don't know. Does that make sense? Or it was just a matter of let's keep them locked in there, and the U.S. and British crews will handle it, and then. But yeah, but it's probably due to the fact it was just. It was right. I mean, we didn't actually see the sub itself being captured. We just heard about it on the phone. General Gogol says, it's one of those great telephone conversations. It's like, what? You mean to tell me that the Potemkin has disappeared? And so he says everything that has been just told to him. What a great moment. But anyway, yeah. Damful says, I think they got the USS Wayne as a bonus. They are already enacting the plan that day with the other two. Yes, that's right. So maybe it just appeared, and maybe it was in their. Maybe the U.S. sub was just in the USS Liparis' sights, and so maybe the Liparis had to capture it as a matter of practicality. It was already ready, as you say, on the day to implement the plan. It was just, oh, here's another sub. Let's just get it. Okay, that's a good point. That's a really good point. It just happens to be the sub that Bond and Amasova are on, of course. But anyway. Let's see. Stromberg's future vision of beneath the sea civilians is Jar Jar Binks. Let's see. Yeah, it does have that interesting globe look to it, like Jar Jar Binks, and when the Gungans, is that right, in Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace? It has that similar type of look to it in the not Liparis, but the Atlantis, and the whole use of spheres and the spider look to it. It has a little bit of an animal design to it. Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, Damful says each sub has 16 Polaris missiles aboard. Yeah, as per Freddie or Frederick Gray's information. Yeah, yeah. Incidentally, too, it's also great to see the expansion of the British government side, MI6, and also Ministry of Defense. We see Frederick Gray, and we also see. We see the military side, Bond in uniform. And saluting as an officer, a commander, and we see M too, but M is not at that briefing stage, but Q, and we also see Hargreaves, and we'll see Hargreaves again, right? Ark Royal, wasn't it? Right, and of course we'll see Hargreaves again, right, in other Bond films. So maybe in other Bond films, instead of saying Ark Royal, wasn't he'll say, "Oh, Spy Who Loved Me," wasn't it? But anyway, that's for another day. Yeah. Yeah. Robert Brown, by the way, has one of the great lines of any Bond film, and we'll talk about it in License to Kill. Right? Effective immediate. Your license to kill has been revoked. Right? So it's great stuff. What a farewell to arms. Well, we'll talk about that film later. Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm totally off topic here, but it would be great to have a Timothy Dalton Bond film where he's just saying nothing but Ernest Hemingway titles. For whom the bell toll. Talk about an Indian camp or something like that. Okay, yeah. Let's see. Let's see. Yes, Damful says save it for a rainy day. Talking about the third submarine. Orders are orders. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Giovanni says the late code change made no sense. If you're nuking a particular city, precision shouldn't be an issue. Haha. Yeah, so I wonder what the protocols are for the codes. Yeah, because that becomes a whole little subgenre of this kind of story. You know, what code to believe. You need a code for the code for the code. That sort of thing. Yeah. Anyway. Oh well. I mean, but at the same time, this isn't. We understand this isn't necessarily a. I mean, this is a private army. We understand by Stromberg, so maybe they don't have the same kind of protocol training as maybe other first world nations would. So, especially during the Cold War. So, okay. Yeah, damn fool. A lot of these questions carries from the fact that originally the villain was Spectre, and it had to be changed when McClory threw a fit. Thus, even the uniforms were made orange. Yeah, is it orange or red? Maybe they're red, or maybe they're a mix between the two. What's the color that's between orange and red? I forget. But it's an interesting thing about colors and use of colors in Bond. It's the same thing with, like, in Man with the Golden Gun. I think I mentioned it a little bit last week, but the green Rolls Royce, and you look at is it green or is it black or is it olive green? I don't know. But anyway, red, orange. Yeah. So okay. And of course, it depends on the TV and your calibration. So I get that. So in the version, yeah. But let's see. Okay. Stromberg eats roast beef. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Stromberg. Stromberg dines very well. Right. Right. So much so that a lot of people make point of how brutal and how abrupt Stromberg's death scene is. You know, when you have a Bond villain, they usually have this spectacular demise scene set up for them, where Stromberg is just sitting at his table and is just very brutally shot by Bond a number of times. There's a moment too, which is really scary, when Stromberg does this. He's like trying to protect himself, but being shot. It's really scary, actually. But as well as the bit with the tube, and where we assume the bullet or the first two bullets hit, because I think, right, he shoots. Does Bond shoot in the tube twice? I think, right? But which is right. That's I'm reminded of the line between Professor Plum and Colonel Mustard in the film Clue. Oh, it's what we call overkill. It's what we call psychotic, or something. But that's a lot of. You didn't have to go that far. But really, I suppose it was Bond and Stromberg, after everything that Stromberg put Bond through, I suppose. But anyway. Yeah, so a lot has been made of the fact that it seems brutal and very, very much a tonal shift in that particular moment. And it's not like this spectacular demise scene that we are accustomed to, say, in another Bond film. But it's perhaps in keeping with Stromberg, because after all, Stromberg does like to eat. He likes to dine. He's a gourmand, so he likes good food and good wine. And so maybe that's the thing. He's doing what it is he's known for, which is he's dying at the dinner table. So, okay, so there is that. Okay. Okay, let's see here. Oh, hold on for a second. I think I have to go into that room. My son is calling. So please just give me a few minutes. I will be right back. And in the meantime, please enjoy Roger Moore's face, and I will be back momentarily. Just give me 1 second, please. Oh, excuse me. I'll be back momentarily. Excuse me. What's up? You okay? You okay? All right, see you later. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry about that. I have returned my apologies, but I just needed to. My son has woken up, but I just needed to take care of my son for a bit. So I'll be heading off soon, but we have a little bit more time, so let's continue on. So thank you very much for letting me tend to my family there for a minute. But returning now to the, can you hear me? I hope the sound is okay. Returning now to the, hold on. Yes. Yes. Let's kind of scroll down here a bit. Sorry. There we go. Irwin's making the quote of "women drivers," which is a line right in the scene with the attack by Jaws on the van. I have never understood. I never that's an interesting line, right? We've seen similar sorts of instances with that, especially in Moonraker and a woman, with Holly Goodhead and NASA, but. Excuse me. Excuse me. That's an interesting scene. The attack while Anya Masova is so desperately trying to drive off. I never understood Bond's. He's very calm in that scene. Oh, here's the key. Here. Try the big. I mean, it's he's in the car too, and so he's under as much threat as Anya is by Jaws is just the relentless pummeling of the vehicle. So, but oh well, that's something for another. Yeah. Anyway, let's see. Oh well, never quite understood that, but Bond needs to be funny, and then right, Anya Amasova has, I guess, the great retort, which is shaken, but not stirred. So okay, and Bond's like, but it's the idea, of course, that Anya is able to match Bond, and perhaps in many respects exceed what Bond is able to achieve as well. So it's an interesting thing. So as I go here, yeah, Ryder Rated is 18 is here. Hello, yes, the music was perfect for its time. Yeah. And let's see. Yeah, Damful says, on the album you get Bond 77, which is a different recording. The film used versions like the rest of the score have never been released. Yeah, that's. Thanks for the confirmation. So yeah, it is a different rendition. Yeah. Speaking of the tanker and the sets and Ken Adam, I'm just going through here as I just go through. It's a great chat, by the way. Yeah, Damn Fool says, I love the title of the film is slowly revealed on the. And it's like staccato. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, so Ken Adams talking about the sets, which are great, by the way. What great design. It's a lot of shiny materials, which is very much a la Diamonds Are Forever. And it's, of course, also reminiscent of the large interiors of You Only Live Twice, for example. And I love Ken Adam in the documentary he's talking about, Stanley Kubrick. And I love whenever Ken Adams talking, he's talking about Kubrick. I love how he says, I love Ken Adams' comments about, he says, Kubrick. And he's like, and I love also when he says when he's saying tongue in the cheek. I love when he says the name Kubrick, and I love when he says tongue in the cheek. And so let's see. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, Erwin is. There's also. I was talking about nudity in the opening titles. There's also a little bit of nudity in the background of the submarine interior at the pre-credits, in terms of the some of the pictures that are on the wall. And in fact, you go down and there's a table. It focuses on the table of the guys playing chess. And in fact, the table behind you, I think there's like a guy, maybe he has a beard, I forget, and he's reading what looks to be a pornographic magazine, I think, or maybe it's a magazine with a picture of a nude model. But anyway, I mean, there had been instances, I suppose, of nudity, if you count, for example, From Russia with Love. But yeah. Yeah, Cooper Glover says, "Where's Fekesh?" And he says, "With the pharaohs." And he says, "Oh, you killed him?" "No, he's dead when I found him." And she has her assistants try to kill. And I love what she reveals afterwards, what their names were: Ivan and Boris. Okay, I'm sorry about Ivan and Boris. They exceeded their orders. Yeah. And we find out a little about Anya Masova Bacardi on the rocks. And for the gentleman, vodka martinis, shaken, not stirred. And then we find a little bit of history, which is a very interesting moment, by the way, in the club, which is that this is establishing, therefore, that Roger Moore's James Bond is indeed the same James Bond that was on Her Majesty's Secret Service James Bond, because it makes direct reference to Tracy. Or at least the fact that James Bond was married and wife killed, and all right, you've made your point, yes. Which is a great moment of acting on the part of Roger Moore. I mean, it's a great performance overall, don't get me wrong, but it's a really powerful, quiet, dramatic moment. It's his look and his expression, which is so emotionally raw, and the way he covers it up. Like, about certain things, yes. And then he turns and says, tragically, I have another engagement. And he becomes that Roger Moore Bond again. But there's a moment where he becomes really emotionally involved. And it happens not just here, but in other moments of the film, like when he's trying to explain to Anya Amasova about killing, and about how it has been discovered that it was he who killed the man that she loved. Which is an interesting twist too, because she is essentially, in the earlier moment, in essence, teasing Bond, or using the thing about Bond's wife in order to show, or to essentially show off, the fact that she knows everything about him. So she is very cavalier in that instance about a very emotionally poignant relationship that he had with his wife, who is now wife was killed. And in fact, it's a similar sort of thing. In fact, she shows the same kind of emotional intensity, if you will, when it comes to talking about her and a relationship that she had with someone. But in fact, it's an interesting twist, because the person who killed the man that she loves is in fact James Bond. It's not Blofeld, so it's a different thing entirely, in fact. But people in this business get killed. You know that, and I know that, and so did he, right? And so that's an interesting thing, and it creates, of course, the third act tension between the two characters. So much so that you really believe that at the very end, at least I do, when Anya has the gun, the mission is over, Commander. You really think that she might, in fact, pull the trigger. So, yeah. So, and then the champagne goes off, and that's another great look on Roger Moore's face when the sound of the cork popping is. I love that look too. That's a really great look. But let's see. So, what was I saying? So yeah. So in fact, I mean, I said only took. It's like, what? It's like, I don't know if you know the show The Simpsons. The Simpsons, there's an episode of The Simpsons where Homer meets a person who runs a store whose name is John and who's voiced by John Waters. And this character of John is gay, and Homer has this sort of prejudice, and throughout the show, he is trying essentially to deal with his prejudice because of the relationship between this character and his son Bart. And then there's a thing about alligators or some kind of threat or something to Homer, and then the character voiced by John Waters comes and saves the day. And then I'm glad you came around. All I had to do was save your life, right? So in fact, you had a main character whose sort of motivations of, let's say, prejudice and anger were able to be turned to a position of acceptance, only by virtue of the fact that another character saved his life. So it's a similar sort of thing with Anya Amasova. She had this prejudice, or not prejudice, she had this hatred towards Bond because of what Bond did to the man that she loved. But the only thing that he had to do was to save her life, and that turned her to being a friend of Bond, and of course now a lover of Bond. So that's a very powerful thing, saving one's life. Let's see. I was going to say that the Chinese have an expression about saving one's life, but I was totally misappropriating something from the film For Your Eyes Only, in terms of the, when you go and seek out revenge, you first must dig 2 graves or something like that, which is what Bond says to Melina at the beginning there. So that's completely different. So perhaps I'm mixing up the metaphors, or maybe I'm mixing up Bond with Star Wars. I think Star Wars, someone made mention of Jar Jar Binks, and so right in the Gungans, in episode 1, The Phantom Menace, there's this thing about a life debt. If you saved the life of a Gungan, they owe you for life. And so maybe that was this thing with Anya Matsudo. So in fact, there are more links to Star Wars episode 1, The Phantom Menace, to The Spy Who Loved Me than I first originally thought. So maybe there is this idea of a life debt. So Anya, very much like Jar Jar Binks or a Gungan, her life was saved by Bond, and so perhaps now she owes him a life debt. Okay, so anyway. Giovanni, thank you. Daisuke, I believe the term for a quick drop ascension in notes is a glissando. Thank you very much. Think of the opening of Rhapsody in Blue. Thank you very much, my friend. Thank you. Is it the same if it goes like Rhapsody in Blue goes, it goes from low register to a high register? Is it the same if it goes from a high register to a low register? Because here in Spy, it's so it goes from high to low. Is it, if it's the same phrasing? Thank you. Glissando. Thank you very much. Balin the Hobbit is here. Hello. Richard Wagner is here. Hello. Yeah, Cooper Clever 1972 is talking about the pilot and the helicopter pilot comment that I made. Yeah, even Blofeld too, right? The pilot in For Your Eyes Only, or Blofeld in that film, or some guy with a cat who's sitting in a wheelchair and is bald, says, same thing with the pilot, one of his less useful people. Yes, Irwin's talking about, yes, Caroline Munro, yes, as Naomi. Let's see, Vaughn Jarvis says, that's one of my all-time favorite of Seinfeld. Yes, the marine biologist. Thank you. And the marine biologist and golf. That's a very important link. Yes. Let's see. Richard says Bond villains love to play cat and mouse. David Jones says the film has Moore's Bond at his most mean and ruthless. That's interesting. I think also Man with the Golden Gun shows a lot of mean aspects of the character. He's pretty mean to Stromberg, that's for sure. But perhaps that was due to all the stuff that Stromberg did. The same thing too with Naomi when she's in the helicopter. Although, yeah, well, anyway, forget it. Yeah, when he, now it's time to say goodbye to an invited guest, boom, and then shoots the rocket up and kills the helicopter pilot and Naomi, of course. Alone at last. Hanok says, I want that ready for Ahmed's tea party. Yes, this is reference to the Q scene, which is in the laboratory is inside or some kind of structure connected to, this is the temple of Abu Simbel in Egypt, right? So we're led to believe that the British government has a base inside or somewhere inside this place, right? That's very interesting. But and not just that, it's not just a base; it's a central base of operations because Q is there and also M is there, and so Moneypenny is there too. So it's very interesting. And another thing that's interesting, not just them, but also Gogol and Amasova are there as well. So you have a lot of things going on. So it begs the question: is this a British base? It probably is because of all the British MI6 personnel. And it begs the question, if it's indeed a British base of operations, why the heck would they have allowed Gogol and Amasova in there in the first place when you're talking about a lot of secret information? A lot of these things that Q is planning in the laboratory are things that he would probably have used in the field. So, and in fact, Amasova makes kind of a joke about this later on, about how she stole the blueprints of the Lotus car 2 years ago, and that's how she knew how some of the functions were in order to evade the people who were chasing them underwater, the Thunderball fight. And so it begs the question, why would they allow Gogol and Amasova in there? I have no idea why. I have no idea. They should have been in a separate room, which was sealed off from the rest, because they would still be enemies as soon as this mission is over, I think. But oh well. It's a small moment, I suppose. And I suppose then what M could have done afterwards would have been to say, listen, Q, all these things you're working on, you're going to scrap them, you're going to throw them out because they've already been seen by everyone here. So that thing in the saddle with the knife going up and everything, that's, we're going to throw it away, and we're going to develop new plans because we don't, because it's been seen. So you should design new plans for these gadgets. Okay, Q. So that's what he should have done, and I'd like to assume that's what M actually did to Q off screen somewhere. But in any event, yeah. Desmond Llewellyn's Q here is great, by the way. It's really great. You know, another thing too, he says again, when I was a kid, when he says the word wake, about how to track the submarines in exactly the same manner, by its wake. I didn't know what the word wake was outside of the context of waking up. So I never knew why he used the word wake the way he did early on in the film. Of course, I learned later what what other meanings of the word wake meant, including in the context of a trail in water. But okay, so yeah. It's great stuff. Also, I I don't want to go into too much detail, but there's something about the Star Trek film Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country, and there's a similar kind of design about the wake or the trail, and what a ship leaves behind in terms of a trail. So I always like to think, whenever I think of that scene in Star Trek VI, I always think back to Desmond Llewellyn and the word wake. So anyway, sorry about that aside. Scrolling down here. Mike says, I can't help but think of sharks with freaking laser beams attached to their heads when I see this. My apologies. Yeah. While I'm scrolling down, we should talk about Barbara Bach and Major Amasova, the character. I did mention a little bit how the relationship is one where they're meant to be equals, in the sense that she is very capable as an agent. And in fact, there are moments where she is a much more successful agent in terms of, first of all, getting the microphone. It's in fact she who ends up succeeding in the mission of getting the microphone, whereas Bond failed. Bond was close, and Bond made some discoveries along the way, and Bond, to his credit, discovered that the microphone was, in fact, in terms of its content, useless. But still, it was she who ended up succeeding with the cigarettes, by the way. Thank goodness, by the way, that the cigarette gadget was not the same type of cigarette. Thank goodness, for instance, that Anya Amasova didn't get her cigarettes from Tiger Tanaka. That's all I have to say. Because if it was a Tiger Tanaka cigarette, you better get out of the way, especially that proximity, you know, and boom, ah, my goodness. And it was pointed right at his face too, but in any event, thank goodness it was not a Tiger Tanaka cigarette. That's all I have to say. And the Anya Amasova character, she likes to show off, right, because they are rivals at the beginning. And she, she is not above using her own sexuality in order to get what it is she needs for a mission. And that's, I think, what she does in order to put Bond off guard at the very end there, with the boat. There are some things, of course, that she cannot do that Bond is able to do in terms of her language ability. Bond is able to speak in the local language where she apparently cannot. Bond has a certain ability to fight against Jaws, and it seems maybe that she is unable to defend herself against this huge hulking man, especially on the train, whereas he is able to somehow have him thrown out the train and sort of live to fight another day. That's an interesting thing too. There's a moment where Bond is in his own compartment and he's looking out the window as the train is moving, and I always like to think what Bond is, maybe, what does Bond think? Maybe he's thinking, you know, I threw Teehee out of a window pretty much similar to this, you know. Oh, it really reminds me of that. But so I'd like to think maybe he's thinking of Teehee, not from Live and Let Die. But and in fact, the way that you had Jaws dispatched in that scene is very much a Teehee moment. So really interesting stuff. In fact, the look too, and how Bond is even reaching for the lamp is it's pretty similar to how Bond is stuck there in the Teehee grip, and he's reaching for the clippers there to clip the little things there in his arm. So it's like it's a very much a Red Grant callback, but it's also a Live and Let Die callback. I think very pronounced. And so returning to the Anya Amasova Bond relationship, I like how it's structured too, because it's divided into three basic components. First being they are rivals, and then the next being they are allies and they're working together. And then when this dramatic switch comes, when in terms of the discovery of what Bond did to Anya Amasova's lover, then there's a really thick tension between them, which is then resolved by Bond rescuing her from Atlantis, and then that leads to the end there. So that's, I think, an interesting way to structure it. I suppose what one could say is, if people had complaints about Mary Goodnight, how the Goodnight character was handled especially in The Man with the Golden Gun. I think similar types of criticisms might be had with respect to how the Anya Amasova character was handled in the final act of the film, because she's just there as just tied up to the chair, really. She's not part of the action. It would have been interesting, for example, had she been part of the Leparis action, or maybe she starts her own little uprising within Atlantis itself, or something like that. So she becomes pretty much inactive in the final act of the film. And she was very active, I think, all the way up there. Although at the same time, I think there's a moment which I really like, which is the bit where she's playing around, or she's not playing around, she's using strategically the gadgets in the car. And I like that moment. And so it's sort of an equalizing moment. But arguably, perhaps after the first act, when they are still rivals, after that act is over, arguably her role is somewhat diminished, and quite diminished by the third act of the film. So, but still, there is, especially in the first part, she shines, I think, as a really equal of Bond in terms of her spycraft. It's really good, by the way. And I mentioned in the last live stream, but I like her. Dun! I like that. Dun, yeah, I like that very much. It's very cool. Very cool indeed. You forgot your drink, Mr. Bond. I like the tone of voice and the deliberate, methodical delivery of everything that she says. What happened? Just came in for a trip. What shall we use for a bandage? And then Bond says, how about this, in terms of their build up to the lovemaking, and of course cuts to the train, of course. But that was another thing that always perplexed me as a kid, was if he's bleeding, why would they use her nightie in order to stop the bleeding? Wouldn't they use a bandage or a Band-Aid? This was me when I was a kid. Of course, years later I understood what the reference was, but oh well. Yeah. I hope they didn't really use it as a bandage, by the way. I hope they managed to find enough time to get a Band-Aid or something in between lovemaking sessions, but oh well. Because it looked really serious if it wasn't treated. Yeah, Kalba, Max Kalba, the club. That's a great club. I'd love to. Oh, if there was a club like that, I'd love to go there every night. Just sit there and listen. That music is so great, and the whole thing with the dun 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 dun. That's so cool. That's cool stuff. I could just sit there and just listen to that performance all the time. Great stuff. And those phone booths too. That's so cool. Wow. And it had that design. I remember my parents, when I was a kid, they had chairs, and the back part of the support back of the chair had that similar type of design that you see in the phone booths there. And there's so many. And am I mistaken to think there are a lot of phones there? It's great. Again, it was a different time, I suppose. It's not like what we have today in terms of the lack of need for phone booths, for the most part, because of the general use of smartphones and the like. So interesting. Phones and Bond films. That's a great thing. It's totally off topic, but I'm going through the Criterion version of this, which is The Irishman, in hopes maybe I can make a video about it before the end of the year. But one of the things that's talked about there is the phones, and how the period phones were much different, of course, from the phones that we are used to now, and they were heavy and things. So it's wonderful to see phone scenes in films, and of course James Bond films as well, because there are a lot of great phone scenes. Yeah. What are some other great phone scenes in Bond? I wonder. If you have any examples, please let me know. Okay. Yeah, mention of Claude Renoir. Irwin says, The Spy Who Loved, or Tiswillem's use of the music from Lawrence of Arabia was a bit over the top. So this is the bit where Anya and Bond are walking from the van, which is now broken down, and they're walking in the desert. The cylinder, what is it? What did she say? The cylinder head gasket, I think. I'm not a car person, so I don't know. Yeah, that's. I don't. Is it that moment that bothers you, or is it the moment before, which is the sort of the big band type of da 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 when the car is about to, or the van is about to break down, dun 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 dun, right? Or that part. I thought that was really charming, in fact, and also there is the bit at the end, da, 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 nobody does it, right? So that's great, and the helicopter is great. I love also there. I love how the singers pronounce the word in the British. I guess it's the British intonation of the word half. Half as good as you, because we're used to the half as good as baby, you're the best, duh, duh, and it goes right. That's great stuff. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah. Are there other Bond films where the closing credit songs are your favorites? I mean, we saw slightly. It's the way that the song fades out at the closing credits here is different from the way the song fades out in the opening credits, right? In the opening credits, it fades out. Baby, you're the best. Cut to Gogol walking in a brooding fashion in his office. Yeah. Let's see. Why was Jaws not in more James Bond films? Well, because he found love, right? And he found another meaning in his life. Oh, so yeah. Armin, that's an interesting statement from Armin, who says Moore is probably the coldest of all Bonds. That's interesting. That's really, maybe he seems that way because when the cold moments happen, they are really filled with a lot of impact. I mean, we haven't spoken about it yet, but this comes through really a lot in For Your Eyes Only. You left with this with Farrar, I believe. He throws it in a very similar manner, like that's another thing too, how people throw things in Bond films. So there's this, and we'll talk about it in For Your Eyes Only, and there's also this, which is the way that Stromberg's throwing whatever it is. What is he eating, by the way? But anyway, he's throwing that stuff in the palm there. Let him get ashore and kill him and get me more of these nuts. So yeah, let's see. Damn Fly Hills Crusader, yes. Shane Rimmer fan club, Kugler, grab a weapon, yeah, grab a weapon, go, yeah. But James, that comes from the top. 40 minutes. You're gonna get me court-martialed. Yeah. And he gives him like 5 extra minutes too, so it's an hour and 5 minutes, right? So yeah. Yeah, Roger was. I thought he was great in this. He looked the part. He thought he was very great stuff. And he was casual. He had that casual feel to it. Oh, great stuff. Yeah. And you get a little bit of the, oh, oh. Do we get any, oh? We don't get any of those, right? But we get a, right? I think, please correct me if I'm wrong, but we get a little bit of the, oh, or half of the, oh, when he punches Jaws in the mouth, I think, right? At the beginning in Egypt. One of my favorite Roger moments too is when he's riding that thing. He's you know he has his own, what is it, Slim Pickens moment. He's riding the bomb, right? Dun 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 dun. It's great stuff. And you see his, dun dun dun, and here are the, you can see Bond riding the bomb. You can see his shoe. Oh, it's cool, so cool. And then it's da 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 da. So the monitor's faded. Oh, it's great stuff. What that's, and then Bond's like, "Come on, move, move," and then he does it. And then I love too the bit where he's not just he drops down, but he drops down and he makes the point to cover his ears. Very, very smart. That's the thing that you should do, because the explosion is going to be loud. I love little details like that to acknowledge the reality of the situation. Then again, I've never been in a situation where I've seen the explosion of explosive matter that is otherwise housed in a Polaris missile, but still, I would assume it's going to be very loud indeed. So yeah, and yeah, and also the I was going to say too, the violence is actually pretty violent indeed. Some of the gunshot wounds are really graphic. You see some of the close-ups of the people, the Stromberg crew getting shot in the La Paz tanker scene at the end. There's one bit where, what is that thing? There's like like a tube with a rocket in it, or an some kind of air propulsion based rocket, and I don't know what that is. Does anyone know what that is? And he shoots it, and it goes through the two guys. Like, well, that's pretty graphic stuff. I don't know. And then, of course, capping it off with the scene involving Stromberg and Bond shooting. Yeah. Oh, thank you very much. Impulse conductor circuit. Thank you very much. So, I am going through towards the end of the chat. So it's almost 9 a.m. where I am. So let us begin to close down this great conversation everyone is having. Thank you, and let us also begin to think about what film we want to do next for next live stream. So think about the films that we want to do next, and we'll go from there. So also, I have a little question for anyone who's still out there and is interested. There is, in this film, what is one of my absolute favorite lines of dialogue in any Bond film. Now, if anyone can guess what that line of dialogue is, I will be so happy. So please, so here's another question. What is my favorite line? What is Daisuke's favorite line of dialogue? It is my favorite line of dialogue in this film, and my favorite line of dialogue in any Bond film. So what is my favorite line from The Spy Who Loved Me? And then we will go from there. Anyway, Erwin says, no, after you, Miles. Miles, so we know Miles' name. Yes, that's great. Sorry, I'm skipping over a lot of great comments here in the chat, so I apologize very much so for this. Yeah. Okay. All right, my friends. So, I am off to sort of get ready for my day here. So, and I have to unplug the phone because this is the point where I've spoken, and I don't know, the battery life is of my phone is a little bit older, but I'm shooting this on the iPhone, and so the battery life is such that it's only about 3 hours, so I have less than 10% of battery life. And as you know, in the world of smartphones, 10% is nothing. So whenever you reach 10%, that's the end, I think. So I'm going to unplug the microphone now and then plug it in. So that'll go into after time of the live chat. So just to end here with The Spy Who Loved Me, I'm sorry I seem to always monopolize the conversation. So I apologize for skipping over the comments and also jumping in the live chat. It's not my intention, but this is to me one of the classics. It is epic. There was a lot riding on this film. It also is. It's a landmark milestone in terms of the creative process and also signs of things to come, and the Albert Broccoli vision, if you will, of the Bond character and cinematic interpretation of the character, as well as a further solidification of the presence of Roger Moore as James Bond. I mean, if no one had any doubts, right? At least the people that we're talking to in this little space now of this live stream, I think everyone more or less was with Roger Moore from the very beginning with Live and Let Die and The Man with the Golden Gun. But we also know that there are criticisms of, for example, The Man with the Golden Gun, and perhaps that is also directed towards the performances. But even if those exist, I think we can all agree that they are all solidified, and the performance is magnetic, and it's made totally Roger Moore's by this point. I mean, if you had any doubts before, you don't have them anymore because they are here, and he is here to stay. And whether we see him in For Your Eyes Only, or what we would actually see, which would be Moonraker and beyond, still we are given yet another iconic Roger Moore performance in an iconic film with so many iconic moments. So this is The Spy Who Loved Me, one of my favorites. So anyway, so with that, let me just unplug the mic and plug in the battery, and we will go into overtime. Okay, there we go. So that should be okay. I hope the sound is okay. I apologize for the drop in sound quality, but I hope you can forgive me. But in any event, I think we are now at the stage where, let's see. So 2 questions are, what do you think my favorite line is in The Spy Who Loved Me? And in fact, I would like to end my live stream with such line of dialogue from The Spy Who Loved Me. So if anyone can guess what it is, I will be very impressed. And I don't mean it to be like, I don't mean it to be obscure or anything like that, but it's just so weird and random that it just sticks out it really is so conspicuous. It's so wonderful too. And in fact, I think it's not one of these throwaway lines, because I think it's actually referred to or remarked upon in the one of the commentary tracks to the film. You know, the commentary track with Christopher Wood and oh gosh, why am I forgetting his name? Oh gosh, why am I forgetting his name? Gosh, Michael G. Wilson. Thank you. So Michael Wilson, and I think he actually makes reference to this line in the commentary track where he's featured. So so there's that, and also we have to figure out what film we should talk about next. So we have spoken about Dr. No, then You Only Live Twice, and then Diamonds Are Forever for the Connery film. So we haven't spoken about any other Connery films. Then On Her Majesty's Secret Service we've talked about. For Roger Moore films, we've talked about already Live and Let Die, The Man with the Golden Gun, The Spy Who Loved Me, and Moonraker. That's it for Moore. For Pierce Brosnan, Goldeneye, and for Daniel Craig, Casino Royale. So that's it for the film. So if you want to think about what film to talk about next of the ones that we haven't spoken about, please feel free to let me know, and then we'll try to get a consensus going. So let me see here. Kubrick Clever says, "Let them get ashore. Let him get to shore and kill them." Oh, that's a good line. Not my favorite, but it's a good line. Let's see. All those feathers and he still can't fly. That's another good line. Okay. Keeping the British end up, sir, says Goodbye, Steve. That's a good line too, but not. There's one that I like even better. Have you ever read Wood's tie-in novel? No, I haven't. I really should, but I haven't. Okay, so what are some titles that are emerging now? I see Octopussy, View to a Kill. So far, Octopussy or View to a Kill, but let's see. We still have some time left, so we can still decide which one to talk about. But it's up to you, my friends. So Damples, the book, the tie-in book is totally different and the best Fleming pastiche I've ever read. Oh, well. If you say that, then I have to check it out. So let's see. A View to a Kill, says Damien. I wouldn't mind. We haven't spoken. We've only spoken about the one Terrence Young film, which is Dr. No. So we haven't spoken about other Terrence Young films. We haven't spoken about any John Glenn films yet, of course. So we need to. Well, no, actually, we have. Excuse me. We've talked about The Living Daylights. What am I talking about? So we've already spoken about a John Glenn film, which is The Living Daylights. So excuse me, I forgot to mention the Timothy Dalton era. So we've spoken also about The Living Daylights, but we haven't talked about License to Kill yet. So. David Jones says From Russia with Love. Yeah. That would be an interesting one. I mean, I've already mentioned my love of A View to a Kill, but From Russia with Love too is also one of my favorites. I like the bit where I guess it's not really a spoiler. Well, I guess it is, but it's not a major one. But it's where he writes the thing on the picture to Moneypenny, and he's like, with love. And I like how he's about to say with love from Russia, but then he changes his mind. He says with love, and then he goes above it. He says from Russia with love. So that's the title of the film, right? It's written on the picture, I suppose. And then dun, 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 dun. So I'd like to think that if he decided to write in the order that he had seemingly originally intended, which was with love, comma, from Russia, I'd like to think that that could have been a possible alternative title to the film. And if that were the case, I don't think it has the same ring as, I mean, if the film was called With Love from Russia, I'm not sure if it would have the same ring as, say, From Russia with Love. There's something about that order of those two phrases that's really interesting. But anyway. And of course, it has a great fight, too. It has great villains, yes. Yeah. And the scene with the rats as well, yeah. Call Me Buona. Yeah, the handwriting for Russia with Love on the photograph is Young, says in Terrence Young. I love that thing that Terrence Young says when he's talking about the ingredients for the success of Bond. He says, Sean Connery, Sean Connery, Sean Connery. I love that bit. It's like I wish has anyone ever done that on YouTube? Has anyone done that, like taking that clip and just put it on repeat? I just love that. I'd love to see that for like an hour, like of that clip of Terrence Young, Sean Connery, and I think he's carrying like his glasses or something. He's like Sean Connery, Sean Connery, Sean Connery, Sean Connery, great stuff. Anyway, um, yeah. Henox says every person who even comes into contact with that microfilm is to be eliminated. Yeah, so that's a great line too, but not. There's a line that's a little I like a little bit more than that, but that's a cool line. Great line, Henoch. I love that. Um, yeah. Damn fools! I could listen to Young forever. Let's see. So it's is it what is it? So of the people who so 4 votes for A View to a Kill, 1 vote for Octopussy, maybe one for From Russia with Love. Um, I mean, I can go with A View to a Kill. It's just that we have, I guess, because there's so many Roger Moore films that we should I guess we can think of it another way. How many Roger Moore films do we have left to talk about? So we have For Your Eyes Only, Octopussy, and A View to a Kill. So that's 3 for Roger Moore. How many films for Sean Connery? We have um, From Russia with Love, Goldfinger, and Thunderball, and Never Say Never Again. So that's 4. And then for Timothy Dalton, we have License to Kill. Then for Pierce Brosnan, we have Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough, and Die Another Day. And then Daniel Craig, we have Quantum of Solace, um, um, Skyfall, and Spectre, excuse me. And then we have Casino Royale as well. Um, so we can think of it in those terms too. But looks like it. But I'm okay with A View to a Kill. If you want to go with A View to a Kill, that's completely fine with me. I love A View to a Kill. So Mike Eli says he was dead. He was dead when I found him. Yeah, yeah. That's a great line too. And then right, and we get a little bit of Roger Moore. I'd like to think I'd like to think Roger Moore's James Bond was trying to remember back to the high fat martial arts school days, and he's borrowing a little bit of a little what he could pick up from the martial arts school and Chula. But yeah, let's see. Okay, so is it going to be View to a Kill? Okay, if it's yeah. Damn fool says, "Where's Fekish? Parabits? Ah, what a helpful chap!" And I love his. It's like a perfect, like, if you're gonna have you lie on the street and pretend to be dead. It's like you have all these different things, but it's like legs out, arms out. That's yeah. So it's what a helpful chap. That's a great line too. But is it A View to a Kill? Okay, A View to a Kill it is. So we'll do A View to a Kill next. So next live stream will be wow. What a view to a kill. Yes, good stuff. Good stuff. Good choice. I wish I had that same kind of table that Zoran has in his blimp, the thing where he pushes it and he throws the microchips there and like he opens up and it's like, I love that. And that's good stuff. Yeah. Um, yeah, that one of my absolute favorite Bond films, bar none, is A View to a Kill. And I will go down defending The View to a Kill fort to my dying breath, as I truly believe that it's one of the most entertaining Bond films. And even Roger Moore acknowledges in some of the interviews about the film A View to a Kill that he himself says, he says in terms of being long in the tooth, and so I think he acknowledges his age, but I think that he looks great in A View to a Kill. Really, I do, and it's meant to be a kind of swan song of Bond, and I think it works. Like there are some great parallels too between A View to a Kill and all the way back to Live and Let Die. I mean, we still get the same gag with the vehicle being sliced in half, and then right because we had the similar thing with the double decker bus and in Live and Let Die, and we have the same thing with the car. Oh my car! Oh my car! Right, and I'll talk about that too. I mean, it's not. I'm not saying that it's wholly 100% serious. I mean, there are some there's some pretty shaky things that are happening in this film. I mean, oh my car! Oh, right, and I wouldn't. If I were that guy, the taxi driver, I would be in the same position. Like that's my livelihood, right? I mean, we've seen films where the vehicle is the livelihood of the person, right? And I mean, the bicycle thieves is the ultimate example. So that's like Bond becoming the antagonist of a bicycle thief's kind of situation with the taxi driver and in Paris. So that's intense stuff right there. And there's some pretty also shaky things in that. Like if the whole thing with Aubergine in View to a Kill was to assassinate Aubergine in the Eiffel Tower in this clandestine stealth way, then why, first of all, why do it in this really over the top manner with the poison butterfly hook? And why would Zorn be the one driving the getaway boat? You'd think it'd be someone, but that automatic, if there was a witness, you'd think, oh, that's Max Zorn tied to this person who has just been seen assassinating some guy in the Eiffel Tower. So it's like, oh, anyway. But that probably goes to show the levels to which Zorn is really, and we talked a little bit how Stromberg in The Spy Who Loved Me is unhinged, and perhaps the same can be said twice over for Zorn. I mean, there are some moments where he's just really unhinged. I love, by the way, talking about language, how Zorn pronounces the word schedule. He says right on schedule. I love that very much. But anyway, I'm getting way ahead of myself. So and I love, I walk my dog, and I listen to music through the iPhone. Through headphones and right, A View to a Kill. I was just listening to that yesterday while I was walking the dog. Great stuff. Um, wow, that's great. And I love there's the poster art where Grace Jones and Roger Moore are standing back to back. And there's a tagline, what was it? Has James Bond finally met his match? And looking at that as a kid when it came out, how old was I? 6 or something. That was made quite an impact because it said to me immediately, oh, this is probably a film where the villain is really gonna show Bond and is going to be a match for Bond. And so that built up something. And in fact, when you had Zorin and Mayday, wow, and Scarpine and my goodness, um, oh my goodness, these are just really, I think these are they should go into the Villain Hall of Fame. Um, but anyway, I'm getting way ahead of myself. And so this is going to be great. So yes, A View to a Kill will be next, and so we'll talk about that one as we and I'll let you know. It most likely will be same time next week, next Sunday, my time, but I'll make the official announcement going forward. So thank you very much for this, by the way. Thank you. So I'm looking forward to this immensely. Yeah. So but going back to yeah, Matthew says, I vividly remember the scene with Bond on a fire truck. I have no idea why that stuck in my mind. Yeah, but that's a great moment. There's some great John Barry moments too. Like Wine with Stacy, if you know the soundtrack, that is what a great, the way that the melody is intertwined into the soundtrack, the score, and then into the film itself is beautiful. So beautiful. And there's a scene where the score is used, da da da, and then it's just a scene with Stacey Sutton driving home, and I think she's eating chips or something in the car, and it's like da 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 da. That's beautiful. It's beautiful stuff. And there's some other great moments where the flute is used to carry the melody, and uh, da 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 da. Great stuff. Okay, well, again, I'm getting way ahead of myself, and so we will talk about View to a Kill next. So just returning then to Spy Who Loved Me. So sorry about this. So I left the question hanging, which was what what is my favorite line of dialogue from uh Spy Who Loved Me. And so I think if you mentioned it, I apologize. Maybe I skipped it, but I don't seem to recall anyone mentioning it. Again, maybe it was mentioned earlier in the chat, but but I didn't catch it. So if you'd mentioned it and I didn't catch it, I sincerely apologize. It's not my intention, but in the recent comments I'm receiving, it looks, I don't know if I've seen it. So just to end here, Spy Who Loved Me, great lines of dialogue. Many have been mentioned here already, but I think for me, I mean, I like those little weird, quirky offs that just seem to be very random. Like for Moonraker, it was Drax saying, "May I press you to a cucumber sandwich?" I love that line. I love that line. That could be my favorite Moonraker line. And with Man with a Golden Gun, it's the Chula chant, Chula Chula. I love that line. But for me, for The Spy Who Loved Me, it's in a similar vein, which is when they're looking at the microfilm in Q's laboratory in Egypt, and they're looking at the little half thing, which ends up being the fish symbol for Stromberg fish shipping line. And they say, and Gogol says, oratory. What's that? Another name for chapel. And then in comes the great Desmond Llewellyn as Q, who gives my favorite line, which is, right, looks a bit like a bishop's mitre. The bishop's mitre line. My goodness. That is iconic. Yes, looks a bit great. The bishop's mitre line. Yes, love it. Yes, looks a little like a bishop's mitre. Yes, and I was thinking like that because again, when I was a kid, and they're saying, or like oratory. What's another name for chapel? I didn't know what oratory meant, and also it's like, oh, it looks like a bishop's mitre. Like, what is a bishop's mitre? I had no way. I right. What is a bishop's mitre? But I guess right. This is the language. So yeah, great. So the bishop's mitre line. I love that line. So anyway, so that's it. So that's the bishop's mitre line from The Spy Who Loved Me. And I think, yeah, Michael G. Wilson makes comment about the bishop's mitre line to Christopher Wood, and he also makes comment in the Moonraker commentary about the "May I press you to a cucumber sandwich" line as well. So maybe there's something about what Michael Wilson says, and yeah. So anyway, that's the bishop's mitre line from The Spy Who Loved Me. It's hard to top that one, to be perfectly honest. I'm not being facetious, or I'm not trying to be jokey here. I'm being very serious. I think that's a great, because it's so random, and it's just you're trying to use something in order to explain what something means, but the thing that you're relying on, the bishop's mitre, in fact, is even more confusing to me anyway than the actual object that you were intentionally or originally trying to describe in the first place. And so it creates this further level of confusion in my head, which I think it's like Inception, Christopher Nolan's Inception, in terms of the level of confusion that's created. I think it's brilliant. I love it. But anyway, sorry about that. Yes. And anyway, so with that, my friends, let us slowly begin to end for today. So thank you very much. thank you so much for your time. I'll leave this open for another minute or two, and then we will close for the day. So thank you. Yeah, who's Ahmed and where's the party where that tray gets used? Yeah, that's a good question. I don't want to be in that part. I don't want to sit on that saddle either. You know what I mean? Ugh, brings tears to your eyes. Yeah. Oh, I don't even want to think about it. Okay. All right. Let's see, Mike Eli. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mike. I appreciate it as always. Have a really great rest of your day or evening, whatever the case may be, my friend. Stay safe. Um, all right, my friends. So I think we can slowly wind down. So thank you very much. And how should we end this? Um, how should we end the live stream? I guess we can end it with, let's see. Um, I guess we can end it with. Well, let's end it in the way that Spy Who Loved Me began, in that glorious way that it did, with James Bond flying down the ski slope, you know, and then we'll just end it while he's flying in space just before he opens the parachute. So just imagine that scene in your minds, and then imagine that as he's flying, and is he about to open the parachute? It's gonna. All right. So anyway, my friends, thank you very much, as always, and please continue to be happy and healthy and well, and stay safe. Stay safe, my friends. That is very important. Your health and well-being, and that of your family and friends and loved ones. That is the most important thing. I cannot stress that enough. I cannot emphasize that more enough. That is the most important thing. So continue to stay safe, be well, and take very good care of yourselves and your family and friends and loved ones during these times. And once you have done that, my friends, keep on watching a lot of great, great movies, and A View to a Kill, which will be next time. So thank you very much, and please be well, and cheers. And with that, here we go. James Bond skiing down the slope. Here he goes. He's skiing. Da 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 da.